The sooner we get started, the sooner we can get out of here. So, a couple of things people have asked me to say, and a couple of things I'd like to say. First, someone asked me about how does the question get called? Tell us what's the process for calling the question. So, a motion to call the question can be made by shouting from the audience, and that's what you've seen sometimes. Other folks have put a motion to call the question into the chat, and I'll take it that way too. But a motion to call the question is taken at the discretion of the moderator. And when the question is called, I'm looking at the speaker list, thinking about, have all of the arguments been made sufficiently? And if I think the answer is no, I won't take the question and we'll continue. I might go another speaker or two, and then I'll take another motion to call the question. And then once I take the motion, we'll then have a vote, and it has to be a 2/3 vote, always a 2/3 vote to terminate debate. I take it as kind of a point of pride, trying not to get overturned by town meeting. So I'm sitting there trying to read the room, and sometimes I have trouble reading the room. And if I get it wrong, you guys will tell me I got it wrong. So, but I don't like getting it wrong. So I tend to be a little on the conservative side on whether to take the motion. So there you have it on motions to call the question. Another thing I've been thinking about when we call for a vote, the voting period has been set at 45 seconds, and it's been 45 seconds now, probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And to me, 45 seconds seems a little long. So I asked Mr. Marquando, our IT specialist who helps us with everything IT here, to take a tally, record the tally informally of how many folks have voted after 30 seconds. So he started doing that on the last town meeting night 2, and it turns out on average, 98% of the votes occur within the first 30 seconds. I'm going to ask Dave to continue collecting those statistics. And then what I was thinking is I would submit the statistics to the TMMA executive board. The executive board can think about it and then hopefully make a recommendation, and we can vote in November whether we should keep the 45-second voting period or should we cut it back to 30 seconds. So that's another thing that's going on. I want to talk just a moment about something that happened on the second night, which was, believe it or not, a week ago. It just seems so long ago. And it concerns a good friend of mine, Paul Sainer, who was speaking on Articles 14 and 15. And Paul, if you recall, was speaking remotely, and it seemed like he was going overtime and not heeding the warnings of the moderator to wrap things up. And I was thinking to myself, gosh, I've worked with Paul for a very long time on a lot of things, and that's very unlike Paul. So I had a discussion with him, and what it turns out, he wasn't hearing the feedback from the moderator. So many of you know, and he's given me permission to mention this, that he is blind and he has to speak from memory, and he's working through adaptive devices. And, I don't know what the cause of that was, but it's just something we'll have to, see if we can do a little better on the technology side. Um, so I just wanted to say that, and Paul suggested I say that, and so there you go. Um, the last thing I want to say on that is if I were and one thing I've been thinking about, if I were moderating, what would I have done differently, knowing what I knew at the time? And I probably would have done the same thing that Sandy did. We would have been in the same predicament. It's because we didn't know that he wasn't getting that feedback. So there you have it. Um, Two other things. Uh, Tanisha, can you put up the slide? Um, Chris Dempsey and his partner, Jeff Speck, are running an event for the town. Um, and there's the slide on the screen, and I'll read the blurb. Join Walkable City author, nationally renowned urban planner, and Brookline resident Jeff Speck for a conversation about making Brookline more walkable and vibrant. The event will be at the Coolidge Corner Theater at 7 o'clock on Wednesday, September 10th. It's sponsored by the Center Streets Lots Exploratory Committee. So this is an official town event, which is why I'm publicizing it at a town meeting. And that committee was appointed by the select board to explore the future of the Center Street lots in Coolidge Corner. Admission is free. RSVPs are encouraged, and you can RSVP and learn more at the website centerstreetlots.com. Center is spelled the British way, CENTRE. Or there's a QR code on the screen. I'm sure your cameras will pick that up. Right, I don't think so. But but if you if you get it on your tablet, you might be able to pick it up there. Okay, now one last thing. I want to give a shout out to Big, Brookline Interactive Group. I don't know if everyone has seen this, but they have up on their YouTube site a something pretty, I thought, amazing. It's town meeting in 3 minutes generated by artificial intelligence. And it's quite interesting, and I highly recommend that you see it. And it actually does encapsulate and summarize in 3 minutes what we did in 4 hours. Pretty good. So, okay, so now let's see if we can challenge the AI and get a lot done tonight. We have a lot of warrant articles. Everyone's been asking me, how far are we going to get? I don't know. We'll get as far as we can. Some people have asked me, are we going to finish tonight? And I think if I keep talking, the answer is definitely no. So let's get into it. So the order of business tonight is we start with Article 29, and then we'll go back in order, starting with Article 11, but there's no motion. So the next substantive article will be Article 12. And then 13, 16, 17, we did 14, 15 last week, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, we did 20 last week. 23, there's no motion on 22, 24, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 30 at the very end. Can we get to 30 tonight? I don't think so, but maybe we can. So let's go. Article 29. The motion is on page 29.9 to 29.31 in the combined reports. And the motion is made by Ms. Perla and seconded by Mr. Van Scoyac. First up is Kevin McKenzie for the petitioner and Bitsy Perlman. Hang on. what did I say? 7 minutes?
It was 5.
5. Okay, hang on. Okay, whenever you're ready.
Hello, everyone. I am Bitsy Perlman, town meeting member from Precinct 6 and co-sponsor of Warrant Article 29. And I use they, them pronouns and am the holder of a Massachusetts ID with an X gender marker. Warrant Article 29 seeks to declare our intention that Brookline be a town of safety and protection for transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse people. Next slide, please. We are bringing this warrant article because our transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse neighbors are feeling increasingly under threat from a hostile national climate. And we believe a statement of support from Brookline Town Meeting helps clarify our values and the ways our town strives to support our gender diverse community members. In particular, we wish to remind everyone that 2 years ago, in the May 2023 town meeting, we amended our bylaws to protect providers of and those who seek or use gender-affirming healthcare from abusive litigation, stating that no town resources shall be used to aid anyone who seeks to interfere with the provision of gender-affirming healthcare. Next slide, please. Transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse people are finding their right to exist in public increasingly attacked. A very large number of bills not only seek to restrict their access to healthcare, but to limit the ability of schools to recognize transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse students, and 2, by legislation, define transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse people out of existence. I'm going to pause the thing that I wrote and just emphasize that these bills to literally define the existence of these peoples away, I find particularly pernicious and upsetting, and controlling of the words and language that people can use. Many of these bills are passing, and not only are there active bills in Massachusetts, but there are many national bills. And our neighbors in New Hampshire are finding themselves potentially having to choose between providing healthcare to their children and continuing to live in their communities. The climate is also reducing protections for sexual orientation, and support for same-sex marriage has actually declined from its high point in 2022. Next slide, please. In addition to legislation, the president has passed a number of executive orders seeking also to remove transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse peoples from public life and to define them out of existence have been issued.
All right, my name is Kevin McKenzie. I'm a town meeting member for Precinct 13 and chair of the Commission for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Community Relations. Next slide, please. So Brookline would become not the first in Massachusetts to pass such a statement or resolution, but we would be the first town meeting per our list up on the slide right now. When we submitted this resolution before the warrant closed, it was just Northampton and Worcester. Since then, a number of other municipalities have joined. Next slide, please. And in terms of what this does for Brookline, really, we wanted to think about how do we tailor this to our town, the people who live here, the people who work here, and the people who visit here. So ultimately, that was our focus. There is a much more expansive version of it in the actual resolution itself. I will not go through that all right now, but ultimately, we want to affirm, reaffirm, and recommit town meeting and our town to the community that we, as Bitsy just described, is under attack. And that is all from me.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I forgot about that one.
Next slide, please.
Thank you, Betsy.
Oh.
And sorry, one more thing, I forgot about this part. And up to this moment in time, Warrant Article 29 has been supported by the Advisory Council of Public Health, the Advisory Committee's Human Services Subcommittee, the Advisory Committee itself, Select Board, and the Commission for Women. Now I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Perla.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Fran Perla, Precinct 8 Town Meeting member, and speaking about this Article 29 on behalf of the Advisory Committee. In light of our large mission today, I will skip everything I wrote because it's been covered by the petitioners, and just tell you that one of the goals here is to remind all of the town officials, employees, and volunteers that Brookline is a safe place for this community, and we have many laws to protect them, especially for schools and our staff. So I'm going to limit my discussion to just say that the AC supported the petitioner's view that Brookline needs to take a moral stand, and the petitioners agreed to make a few changes in the wording that would maintain the resolution's goals while being less likely to cause blowback from beyond Brookline's borders. With that, the advisory committee recommended favorable action on Article 29 as amended, and I'm so move this article.
Thank you, Mr. Van Scoyac. Mr. Perlman.
Good evening, David Perlman, Select Board, speaking on behalf of the Select Board. I'm not going to repeat what was already stated beyond just noting that the Select Board was unanimous in supporting favorable action on Article 29 as amended, because we certainly share the sentiments of the warrant article to further affirm the town's support for transgender, non-binary, and gender diverse students, and the importance of safe and inclusive learning environments, appropriate accommodations in public facilities, and staff education. So 5-0 unanimous support by the Select Board for favorable action.
Thank you, Ms. Wu.
Chi-Chi Wu, Town Meeting Member Precinct 7, speaking on behalf and in favor of warrant Article 29. I, of course, urge you to vote for this warrant article. I expect it to pass overwhelmingly with the advisory committee and the select board being in favor of it. And when it does pass overwhelmingly, we should all pat ourselves on the back for passing it and declaring Brookline a safe space for trans and non-binary folks. But don't pat yourself on the back too much. Because if we really want to be a safe space, a sanctuary for trans, non-binary, LGBTQ, and other underrepresented and marginalized communities, we need to support and welcome these communities in two ways. Number one, topic always on the agenda, housing. Our out of control housing costs effectively shut out so many folks from underrepresented and marginalized communities. The impact of discrimination and exclusion has a direct financial impact. My friend Spencer Watson runs the Center for LGBTQ Economic Advancement and Research, or CLEAR. And it's actually based here in Massachusetts. And they did a survey of 2,000 LGBTQIA plus folks, finding significant economic disparities. The majority of LGBTQIA folks surveyed reported a household income of less than $50,000 per year, compared to 36% of adults overall. And in contrast, only 13% of LGBTQIA respondents reported an income of $100,000 or more, versus 34% of adults nationwide. We need much more affordable and middle income housing if we're going to welcome everyone and be a safe space for them. And the other thing we need is support. While I fully believe that the vast majority of folks in Brookline are supportive of the rights of trans and non-binary folk, there are elements out there that might not be as friendly, and we need, and when trans and non-binary folk get bullied or harassed, we need supports for them. And as many of you know, the public schools of Brookline defunded and closed the Office of Educational Equity, the very office that would support trans, non-binary, LGBTQIA, and other students from marginalized communities when they get bullied. So now if a trans child is bullied, who in central administration, who has the role to actually help them and hold folks accountable? Now I know that's the province of the school committee, not town meeting, but you're all residents and engaged folks, and please make your voices known that we need an Office of Educational Equity. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's all the speakers I have lined up. So I think we're ready for a vote. Up, I see a question. Mr. Ebert.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm not up here to torpedo anything. I do just have a question.
Oh, tell us who you are, Mr. Ebert.
I'm John Hebert, Precinct 7 Town Meeting Member. And the question is that Article 29 affirms or maintains a policy that the town have appropriate accommodations in all public facilities. So the question is, does the town currently have any accommodations in public facilities that are not appropriate? And can we expect that that may change as a result of this resolution's passage?
That's a good question. Mr. Lebowitz, you would like to answer? I think the town administrator should answer this one.
Hi, Ches Carey, Town Administrator. Thank you for your question. We are in the process. We continue to provide full accommodation for anyone, and we provide reasonable accommodations upon request. As we move through, for example, we are, as part of the fire station renovations, we are ensuring that everyone is fully accommodated in those buildings regardless of gender. We are doing that every time we renovate a building. We are ensuring that there's better access and not just, for example, single gender restrooms, but also access single stall restrooms and so forth, and access in that regard. So we are already taking those steps. We are progressing, and we are always able to provide any accommodations to folks who need them.
Great. Thank you. Okay, I think we are now ready for a vote. And the motion is as you've heard, and yes is to accept the resolution, and a no is not to accept it. We're ready to go? Okay, drop the vote.
Okay, 198 yes, 0 no, 10 abstentions.
Motion passes 198 to 0, 10 abstentions. Article 12. 11, there's no motion. 13. Okay, the motion is on page 12-22 to 12-39. And it's an amendment to both the zoning code and also the general bylaws pertaining to floodplain overlay districts and floodplain administration. A 2/3 vote is going to be required. The motion is by Mr. Warren, seconded by Ms. Hardebeck. Mr. Warren.
Jazz. He was in the theater. He knows how to do that. Paul Warren speaking on behalf of a unanimous select board. Article 12 has been submitted by the Department of Public Works in response to updated state and federal floodplain regulations, as well as newly issued FEMA flood maps. This article ensures Brookline remains compliant with the National Flood Insurance Program, which helps mitigate the impacts of flooding through affordable insurance and improved floodplain management. FEMA updates its flood insurance rate maps approximately every 10 years to better reflect flood risk. Brookline received a letter of final determination this January requiring adoption of the new maps and corresponding bylaw by July 8th, 2025. So we're running out of time.
If the town does not comply by this deadline, Brookline would be suspended from the National Flood Insurance Program. That's bad. Residents would no longer be able to purchase or maintain federal subsidized flood insurance. That's bad. And the town would lose eligibility for federal disaster aid in the event of a flood emergency. That too is bad. Article 12 adopts the updated maps and revises Brookline's general bylaws and floodplain overlay district based on the state's model floodplain bylaw, which promotes greater clarity, consistency, and protection of vulnerable areas. While FEMA's updated maps indicate minimal changes for Brookline, this article strengthens our longstanding commitment to responsible floodplain regulation. A couple of key updates in the article. It establishes a floodplain administrator, a role assigned to the town environmental engineer or the conservation and natural resources manager if the town's environmental engineer is not available. A floodplain development impact review process is also implemented for projects that may affect flood risk, and updates to the zoning use table for clarity and consistency. Brookline has participated in the National Flood Insurance Program since 1974. Approving Article 12 ensures we remain in good standing, protecting both public safety and property owners' access to flood insurance. A unanimous select board recommends favorable action on Article 12. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hardebeck?
Oh, it's easier than it looks. Good evening, everyone. Kelly Hardebeck, Precinct 7, Town Meeting Member, speaking for the Advisory Committee tonight and recommending favorable action on Warrant Article 12. As you've already heard, Warrant Article 12 is a piece of legislation that will ensure Brookline's continued access to vital federal flood protection programs and protect residents. Quickly, this warrant article does 4 essential things. As you've heard, it adopts FEMA's updated flood insurance maps, replacing outdated 2012 maps that incorporate better topography, improved hydrologic data, and reflect changes due to development. And I really would encourage you to go online and take a look at the new interactive maps so you can see how our flood-prone areas have changed with the new maps. These aren't dramatic changes, and only 33 parcels were added to this special flood hazard area, with just 2 existing structures were affected. And because some of you may ask, I want to just note that DPW did already notify all affected owners. Second, this article formally establishes our environmental engineer as Brookline's official floodplain administrator. This isn't a new position that would require additional funding. It's a designation that improves coordination between departments and ensures we meet state and federal requirements. Third, it updates some terminology from outdated phrases like 100-year floodplain or flood zone to the more accurate 1% annual chance flood zone, thus bringing our bylaws into compliance with current standards. And fourth, it establishes a clear floodplain development impact review process where any new construction, substantial improvement, or land alteration within the floodplain now would require a special permit. That is, unless the floodplain administrator determines the alteration will not increase flooding risk to other properties or this property. The process ensures that all development is reviewed for flood safety with input from the Conservation Commission, town engineers, and others before any permit is granted. Well, why warrant Article 12 and why now? Well, again, as you heard, the last update of the floodplain maps in Brookline was in 2012. FEMA has given the town a deadline of July 8th, 2025 to adopt the updated maps or face suspension from the National Flood Insurance Program. As noted, the new maps are much better and they reflect changes due to development in the town. The advisory committee, by a vote of 21 to 0, recommends favorable action. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hines for the planning board.
Blair Hines, Chair of the Brookline Planning Board, and we reviewed this article and we unanimously support positive action by today's town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Helms Daly.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Susan Helms Daly, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. My remarks will be brief, but I did want to use this opportunity to call attention to the fact that these new FEMA maps are in fact based on data that is at least 5 years old, and in some cases even older. As a result, there is a large swath of the Muddy River Restoration Project, a massive multi-year, nearly $100 million project funded by the Army Corps of Engineers, the Emerald Necklace Conservancy, and others, designed specifically to decrease the flooding risk in Brookline that is not reflected in these new maps. This project involved daylighting the Muddy River in front of the old Sears building. That part is incorporated into these maps, but it also involved a massive amount of dredging along the Muddy River for the last few years, and none of that work is reflected in these maps. Thus, these maps overestimate the risk of flooding to Brookline, and as a result, increase the risk that insurance companies might assign to low-lying areas. I want to be clear that this in no way is the fault of our excellent town staff at the DPW, but rather because of the painstakingly slow grinding of gears that occurs at the federal level, specifically FEMA, an agency whose funding is currently being slashed even further. I am not urging a vote against approving these maps. They are the best available, but they are disappointingly flawed, and we should demand better from our government. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Helms Daly is the last speaker we have signed up, so I think we're ready for a vote. So this will be for the main motion that starts on 1222. As you've heard, it will require a 2/3 vote since part of it modifies our zoning bylaw. Yes is to accept these changes, and no is not to. Ready to go. Natalie?
Yes, 1 no, 4 abstentions.
Motion passes 215 to 1 to 4. Moving on to Article 13. Motion is on page 13-2. Motion is made by Mr. Gordon, seconded by Mr. Rubenstein. Mr. Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Neil Gordon, Precinct 1 Town Meeting Member, speaking both as petitioner and for the advisory committee. With the completion of the Maytown election, we've completed the transition from electing 5 constables all at once to electing constables in staggered terms. Having done so, the last 2 sections of Article 3.4B of the general bylaws are now moot. They can therefore be safely deleted from the bylaw. As noted in the advisory committee report, if moot language remained in the bylaw, readers wouldn't know the language was moot until after they've read it. The advisory committee recommends favorable action by a vote of 24 in favor, none opposed, and with no abstentions. And as petitioner, I ask for favorable action as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubenstein.
Michael Rubenstein, Select Board, speaking on behalf of the Select Board in support of the exemplary analysis of warrant Article 13 provided by my good friend, Mr. Gordon. The Select Board unanimously recommends favorable action on warrant Article 13.
Thank you. They should all be this short. Okay, that's the last speaker we have signed up. So I think we're ready for a vote. Oh, this is Article 13 main motion. Yes is to accept the change. No is to leave it the way it is and have obsolete language in there. But I didn't put my thumb on the scale on that one.
Two hundred and 16 yes, 1 no, 2 abstentions.
Motion passes 216 yes, 1 no, 2 abstentions. Moving on, Article 16. And this is a change to our zoning bylaw that affects bicycle parking, as you will hear. And the motion is on Article 16, Supplement 1, pages 4 through 8. The motion is made by Ms. Florio and seconded by Mr. Dowdy. And first up is the petitioner, Mr. Ishak.
I sent in slides if they could be pulled up, please.
There we go. And put it on full. There we go.
Anthony Ishak, I am a human living in Brookline. Next slide, please. So the background for this warrant article is there were no bicycle parking guidelines until 2021. Prior to that, there was just one line that said that the ratio should be 1 spot per 20 units in a building. At that same time, during the pandemic, my bike was stolen, and that led me to looking to see what protections there would be for bike parking in our town. In order to get the design standards done in an efficient manner, the recommendation was to try and put together general guidelines and bring them before town meeting. And then if details needed to be addressed, to revisit it. There were 2 notable areas that myself and other cyclists had noted that we should revisit. One is the proportion of larger bikes, and 2, making it equitable for the ratio for bicycle parking and affordable housing versus all other multi-unit buildings. Next slide, please. So these are what large bicycles look like. They vary. They could be recumbent bikes for those who have different abilities. They could be bicycles that are meant for families, such as what you see on the top left side. Commonly, those hold multiple kids. You see the bucket one in the middle of the slide that oftentimes will have an adult, sometimes a dog or groceries. Next slide, please. So why is this important? Cambridge and Somerville already have in their design standards that for affordable housing, the ratio is at least 1. Currently in Brookline, it's a half spot. So basically 2 units in affordable housing to share 1 spot. That includes if you're a child, making it difficult for families, those of lower socioeconomic status, which are usually the people who tend to use bicycles for commuting and are most vulnerable to if their bicycle's getting stolen. Picture your automobile getting stolen. That's a main source of transportation. As you can see, the last comment is from an article that I found looking at PubMed. It's very important to have the infrastructure to encourage healthy bicycling. Next slide, please. We have a great need in this town. We are encouraging kids to use bicycles. And if you look at the ratio for bicycle parking for students, they need to have a way to keep their bikes. We're looking at 1 spot for every 4 students to keep up with schools. Next slide. growth across the country, 10% annual growth in large bicycles. I corresponded with the nearest bicycle shop that would sell bicycles, the owner of Landry's, via email, and his quote is up there as far as with large bikes. So if you can't see it, it's almost exclusively electrical assist. They had 10 large bicycles that they were selling a couple of years ago, 30 last year, and they anticipate continuous growth. I asked a small shop in St. Mary's. He works predominantly with racing bikes and assembling bikes, but he said Brookline is a prime place because of the traffic and the ability to commute for errands that a lot of families, and in particular women, would likely be using it, because that's what we see in other countries in terms of larger bike and for mobility. Next slide. Every committee so far, Bicycle Advisory Committee, there was great public input into this, especially with large bikes. The Brookline Commission on Disability Advisory Council have all voted in favor. So I would encourage you, next slide. That's it. I hope town meeting also supports this. It's a 2/3 vote because it is a zoning requirement. So I need every vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Perlman.
David Perlman, Select Board, speaking on behalf of the Select Board. Article 16 in its original form seeks to amend the zoning bylaw to mandate a higher minimum percentage of bicycle parking to be dedicated to larger bicycles and to reduce by half the minimum number of units in a new construction multifamily dwelling that would be required to comply with these revised parking requirements. At the Select Board hearing on warrant Article 16, the petitioner was asked whether there was a demonstrated need for larger bike parking spaces. The response was that when the bicycle parking regulations were last updated at the Springtown meeting of 2021, the petitioners at that time felt that although a higher percentage of larger bicycle spaces were warranted, there might not be sufficient overall public support. Moreover, since that time, the petitioner of warrant Article 16 stated that he believes there is an increased demand for storage of larger bicycles and that more people are using recumbent bicycles along with cargo bicycles to transport children or supplies. As more bike paths are added to public streets, the petitioner reasoned that higher numbers of parents would be transporting their children on bicycles as they take them to preschool or grade school. However, in the absence of any local data or demonstration of general public demand for larger bicycle parking spaces here in Brookline, along with concerns that increased regulation in this area could disincentivize development and lead to negative design trade-offs, the Select Board did not recommend favorable action. The Select Board voted 4-0-1 to recommend no action on Article 16. We did not, however, take up the advisory committee substitute motion.
Thank you. Ms. Florio.
Warrant Article 16 proposes to amend.
And who are you, Ms. Florio?
Catherine Florio, Precinct 10, speaking for the advisory committee. Excuse me, is this better? Okay, great. Warrant Article 16 proposes to amend Article 6.05.3.d and 6.05.3.e of the town's zoning bylaws, vehicular and bicycle service uses requirements as follows: increase the per dwelling unit bicycle parking requirement in new affordable housing construction to match the requirement for other new multi-unit buildings. If passed, this will increase the percentage of total bicycle spaces that are large bicycle spaces from 5% to 10% for all new residential construction of 8 units or more. This reduces the threshold for triggering the large bicycle space requirement from 16 units to 8 units. The total number of bicycle spaces required will remain the same. The split between large spaces and regular spaces is what changes. This warrant article applies only to new residential construction. There will be no retroactive effect on existing multi-unit buildings. Since new construction occurs slowly, the effect is expected to be minimal. Passing this warrant article will align bike space requirements in affordable housing with spaces required in market rate housing. Lower income and older residents are more likely to depend on bicycles for commuting and mobility. This proposal anticipates this need. The cost of this is minimal. It changes the configuration of the bicycle spaces, not total bicycle spaces. I'm going to skip some things that we've heard before. Requirement of 2 large spaces for buildings with only 8 spaces does result in a 25% obligation, not the nominal 10%. This does raise concerns about mathematical and regulatory overreach. It is also possible that the addition of a requirement for more larger bike spaces may reduce the room for essential functions such as trash, mail, or package storage. However, developers do tend to build the minimum requirements set by zoning regulations to minimize their costs. If we do not require them to add these spaces, residents are unlikely to get them. And zoning for the future is how we enact change. The advisory committee recommended, and I'm sorry, I don't have the vote, recommended favorable action on this amendment, on this warrant article.
Thank you. Mr. Hines for the planning board.
Blair Hines, Chairman of the Brookline Planning Board. The planning board looked over this article, and we thought that looking to the future is very important, and that we thought this was a very reasonable accommodation for the future, which will have larger bikes. So the planning board unanimously supports favorable action on this warrant article. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, town meeting. David Pollock, Precinct 11 and Advisory Committee. Also an architect with a lot of experience in multifamily housing. And so I was asked to talk on the narrow subject of large bicycle parking math. Because a lot of people at Advisory Committee really didn't understand, like, well, what's the impact of this and what's the cost? And so there's some diagrams on the upper left that show on the bottom what a typical parking garage would look like in Brookline. The dimensions are all from our current zoning bylaw. Under the current bylaw, minimum parking spaces are 8.5 by 18 feet, and the drive aisle is 23 feet wide. And so each parking space has to also buy some part of the drive aisle. And so for a car, it's about 250 square feet of garage per car. On the lower left, on the upper left, that's standard bicycle parking spaces. They are 2 feet by 6 feet. And so each standard bicycle parking space takes up 17.5 square feet. And on the right of that is a diagram of if you were building only large bicycle spaces in a garage, each space would require 37.5 spaces. So you can fit about 15 standard bicycle spaces into the amount of space it takes for a car, and about 7 large bicycle spaces in the space it takes for a car. So what does all this mean for for example, a 50-unit new construction housing project in Brookline? According to the current bylaw, before we amend it, the entire bicycle parking garage would require 55 spaces, of which 52 would be for standard bicycles and 3 would be for large bicycles. And that would require an area of 996 square feet in the building, which is about the space of 4 cars. If we pass this change, we will require the same 55 parking spaces, but 6 of them will be for large spaces and only 49 for standard spaces. And the amount of space that would require is 1,058 square feet, or about the space for 4 cars. So the change is 62 square feet, which is about 1 square foot per apartment, or the footprint of a king-size bed.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, Bob Miller. And after that is Amanda Zimmerman.
Good evening. My name is Bob Miller. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 2 and a member of the Bicycle Advisory Committee, speaking just for myself. As a retired Brookline Middle School teacher, I'm asking you to support warrant Article 16, More and more students and families are using a bicycle to get to public schools, which is a good and healthy situation. Growing up, my father and I biked to my school each day. We lived in an apartment and we were lucky enough to have the space to store our bicycles. Many people who live in apartments in Brookline don't have room to store their bicycles. More and more people want the choice to use bicycles. Additionally, as parents elect to transport their children on larger and heavier bikes, not only do they need more space, these bicycles may be too large or too heavy to carry upstairs or fit in an elevator. It's a small ask to require new apartment buildings to provide space for families living there to store their bicycles. We require buildings to provide space for automobiles. Why not provide a tiny fraction of that amount of space for residents who choose a bicycle or a larger bicycle for transportation? Reduces the cost of new housing. It's better for the environment, reduces car traffic and pollution, makes it safer for people living in affordable housing to store their bicycles. Increasing the space for large bicycles, providing better bicycle ratio and affordable housing is an equity issue. And this is an easy vote. It only applies to new construction. It only applies to multifamily buildings of 8 units or more, as you've heard. It doesn't cost a lot. It's a climate justice issue. And as I mentioned, it's an equity issue. Please vote yes on Article 16 and give apartment dwellers a choice.
Thank you. Amanda Zimmerman. And Maxim Scheinen is next.
Amanda Zimmerman, town meeting member, precinct 7, member of the Bicycle Advisory Committee, speaking only for myself. I wanted to speak in support of this warrant article and shed a little bit of light as to why large bicycle parking is needed. Let me explain from my own perspective. In 2020, I got my first cargo bike after trying to bike my then 2-year-old and 5-year-old uphill between Coolidge Corner and Cleveland Circle in a trailer. I would not recommend that. But cargo bikes make these climbs with kids so much more doable. Ever since then, it has been our family's preferred means of transportation. And I'm happy to talk with anyone offline with kids up to probably age 12 or so of what biking with them is like. It's fantastic. I can ride with 2 of my now 3 kids, or 3 if I take a trailer, or 6 to 8 bags worth of groceries, making biking a reasonable transportation choice for trips under 5 miles for my family. Cargo bikes, and for that matter, more accessible trikes and recumbent bikes, have allowed us to essentially democratize who can take up biking for transportation. You can see that in the expansion of the number of these bikes you see on the road. When we first got our cargo bike, we were one of 2 to 3 I ever saw in the town. This year, I see multiple cargo bikes at daycare drop-off at Old Lincoln, soccer games on Fisher Hill, Rock Spot Climbing Gym, Lars Anderson, you name it. But to truly make these bikes accessible to more community members, bike parking is a huge issue. When we first moved from precinct 8 to precinct 7, I was literally evaluating apartments based on where the heck we could store our bike. I cannot lift my 60+ pound bike up the stairs or navigate it around tight corners. And the vast majority of our historic housing stock is not built for these bikes. While this warrant article will not affect the dearth of general bike and cargo bike parking in the existing housing stock, it will make sure that going forward, new construction plans for a place to store family-friendly and accessible bicycles. I urge you to vote in support of this warrant article to make one small but important step to make it easier for more people to take this climate-friendly form of transportation more often. Thank you.
I have a motion to call the question. Okay. There are no more, well, there are 3 speakers, Maxim Scheinen, John Harris, Audrey Chang, who's a Brookline High School junior, and then there's 2 folks at the microphone, Mr. Silverberg. God, I'm losing it in my old age. And Mr. Van Scoyac. So let's vote on the motion to call the question. We ready? Let's drop the vote. not everyone got a vote. Talk to IT. It's probably in back, the windows in back.
Yes, 42 no, 7.
Motion passes 173 yes, 42 no, 7 abstentions. We're ready for a vote on the main motion, which is on Article 16, Supplement 1, pages 4 through 8. It requires a 2/3 vote. A yes is to accept the amendment on bicycle parking, and a no is not to. Whenever you're ready, drop the vote.
Mr. Moderator, point of clarification.
Yes.
I'm confused what happened to the advisory committee amendment. Is that what this vote is? Because it said main motion and I didn't know.
Well, the advisory committee amendment is the main motion. So whatever's
that
on,
was accepted by the
Yeah.
petitioner.
yes.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, we're ready. Ready?
Yep.
209 yes, 4 no, 9.
Motion passes 209 to 4 to 9. Or 209, 4, 9. Moving on to Article 18, 17, just as I said. The motion is on pages 17:8 to 17:10. Motion is made by Ms. Jonas and is seconded by Ms. Khan. And this is going to require. With the article. Okay. It's going to require a majority vote. And this has to do with amend the bylaws to restrict firearms in places that serve alcohol and other medical healthcare settings, as you will hear. So first up is Mr. Ishak. Up is Bignami.
Thank you. We do have some slides, if you could put those up.
How many minutes did I give you?
Sorry.
How many minutes did I give you guys?
8 for the 3 of us.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Petra Gospodinetich Bignami, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 12. Good evening, everyone. I will be pretty brief. Warrant Article 17 is a natural extension of 2 prior bylaws, which I had the privilege to bring to this body in years past. For newer colleagues, in 2021, we brought Warrant Article 22, a zoning article regulating where guns could be potentially bought or sold in Brookline. In 2023, we held special town meeting number 1, restricting firearms on town property. Both prior bylaws were carefully crafted and successfully passed. Both were subsequently approved by the Massachusetts AG's office. I hope and expect that Warrant Article 17 will be no different. Simply put, a yes vote codifies 2 truths. Guns and healthcare do not mix. Guns and alcohol do not mix. Many of us hold these as universal and self-evident truths and wish it were so elsewhere in our country. But for now, let's start with Brookline. Anthony will talk to you more about the article.
Next slide, please. Anthony Ishak, still a human. So the objectives are threefold. One, to review the impact of firearms in healthcare, talk about the data with firearms and alcohol, and then also familiarize town meeting with what this bylaw covers. Next slide, please. So healthcare injuries have been increasing over the last couple of decades in healthcare. In fact, as an occupation, it is one of the highest in terms of firearms injuries. What you see is the numbers increase depending on the setting, particularly in ED. This means in the emergency department, it's firearms, not injuries coming in. Injuries are happening within the medical and healthcare system already. Next slide, please. Firearms injuries have been increasing over the years. The last 3 years, the numbers keep going up. In other words, this trend is going up. We are not on the downside of this, unfortunately. Most of the homicides, about a third, can be related to alcohol. And the intersection with alcohol and firearms just don't mix, as was previously stated. Next slide, please. So what we see here is a survey that was done in 2015 before partisanship really took over a lot of topics. You could see in restaurants, most people, over 50%, say no guns in restaurants that serve alcohol. And in bars, it's north of 60% that say no firearms in bars that serve alcohol. Next slide, please. So Johns Hopkins expert group there for firearms and violence prevention recommends that states and towns take actions to reduce the interaction of firearms and alcohol. Next slide. What does Bruin do? Because Bruin has changed everything with firearms. Well, in this area, they specified that firearms can be restricted in areas that serve alcohol. And with respect to healthcare and mental health settings, they said to look towards, like, quote, historical analogous sensitive areas. So we feel with Bruin that this is on the right side of it with the current climate. Next slide. In New York, there was a recent challenge which included alcohol, healthcare settings for mental health, churches, and public parks. The Supreme Court chose not to take it, and this was as of April. So again, further evidence that we feel safe with this. Next slide. So when I was preparing for the topics, if you remember last year in the summer, there was actually a Surgeon General report that came out about firearms violence. And when I went to pull up that article to present it at Advisory Council for Public Health, I went back to the site. Next slide. Federal government has basically abandoned all interest in healthcare in general, and really with anything involving around safety. It comes down to states and it comes down to towns. And I hope this is a step for us to do what we can that will hopefully eventually cause momentum for the state. I'm going to turn it over to Janice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide. So Janice Kahn, town meeting member, precinct 15, member of the advisory committee, and co-petitioner warrant article 17, speaking for myself. So what does warrant article 17 do? Article 17 amends our existing general bylaw, article 6.6, which is called discharging and carrying firearms, by adding a new subsection under 6.6.2, which is labeled carrying firearms. So this new subsection, 6.6.2C, restricts carrying or possessing any firearm in 3 areas: healthcare facilities, including nursing homes, urgent care facilities, and clinics, 2, mental health care facilities and offices, and 3, any establishment such as a restaurant or bar that is licensed to sell alcohol for consumption on site, and importantly, one that is open to the public. This would not apply, for instance, to the country club, which is a private business and not open to the public. Warrant Article 17 has received a unanimous vote of support from the Select Board, the Advisory Committee, the Small Business Development Committee. Oh, next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, there we are. From the Select Board, Advisory Committee, Small Business Development Committee, and the Brookline Advisory Council on Public Health. Additional supporters include State Senator Cynthia Crean, the Giffords Law Center, Grassroots for Violence Prevention, which is a Massachusetts group, and hopefully your support this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Warren.
brief comment of my own, and then I will give the report. My wife, who is actually a town meeting member in Precinct 1, she also is a physician, reminded me before I came up here that one of her colleagues was murdered in his medical office by a firearm not too long ago. The select board, for all the reasons that were presented and described, the select board recommends unanimous favorable action on the motion amended by the advisory committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jonas?
Hi, I'm Elisa Jonas, town meeting member, precinct 16, speaking on behalf of a unanimous advisory committee, urging town meeting to vote in favor of warrant article 17. Anthony, Petra, and Janice did a great job covering the warrant article. So I'm just going to mention a few of the concerns that we had and ones that were addressed. First, in the original proposed bylaw, firearms had been prohibited in an establishment licensed to provide alcohol to be consumed on the premises. But this prohibition would cover not just restaurants and bars, but also private venues not open to the public. That would not pass constitutional muster under current law. The bylaw has been amended to prohibit guns in only those establishments open to the public. The original bylaw also included a prohibition of guns in parking lots adjacent to the regulated restaurant or medical facility. By banning the possession of guns in the adjacent parking lot, this would prohibit anyone parking in the lot from possessing guns, whether they're parking to have a drink at a bar where guns would be prohibited, or to pick up some clothes at the dry cleaner next door where guns are not banned. Brookline is a town where we don't have very many locations where there's parking solely for one particular purpose, like just for the restaurant. So this would have resulted in an overly broad prohibition. So we amended the warrant article to eliminate that provision. The warrant article also discussed the legality of the bylaw in light of the Supreme Court decision, Brune, which requires the government to demonstrate that regulation of firearms be consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. This is not the easiest standard to guide courts, and there's still a lot of debate going on about what will be covered and what will not. Brune explicitly permits guns banned in sensitive places, and that's where guns could be a significant danger. And as Anthony mentioned, it cites restaurants serving alcohol as one such sensitive place. I have to say, my research has found something different for medical facilities. I have not found that the law is clear on that, and there's been different decisions in different courts. But the Gifford Center has informed us that 17 states prohibit firearms in mental health facilities and 15 have restrictions in hospitals, including Michigan, Texas, New Jersey, and New York. Senator Cream wrote in her letter in support of warrant article 17 that the establishments included in the article are places that present distinct public safety concerns. The advisory committee agrees with Senator Cream and the petitioners and recommends favorable action on warrant article 17 by a vote of 23-0.
Thank you. And I believe that's all the speakers we have. Mr. Silverberg.
I have a question, if that's all right.
Sure.
Isaac Silverberg, town meeting member, precinct 7. I noticed in the presentation that it mentioned a distinction between retail pharmacies as not being counted as they're not like providing healthcare, but at some locations you can receive things like a shot or a vaccine. And so I just wanted to, I was just wondering where that line precisely is and how it was drawn. I apologize if it's laid out clearly and I missed it.
Is that a town council question?
I don't know, but I'm asking.
I'm looking, or I'll turn to the petitioner if town council isn't prepared to answer that. Okay, the petitioner. So we will not get the official legal answer from the town.
So I'm a pharmacist. I am not a lawyer. I did bring this question up to Gifford. And so here's where the distinction lies. And these were the examples I gave, and they were the examples that in their eyes, that's what they see. So if you picture CVS, currently the 3 pharmacies that we have, they're mostly retail, and there's a pharmacy and you pick up prescriptions. What is implied by medical and mental health care is care. So for example, if there was a Minuteman clinic, then this law would apply to that area of the pharmacy. So you could go to CVS, you could pick it up, but technically if there was care being provided, like healthcare, that is what is envisioned to be covered under this bylaw. This is also where it will be, you know, as time goes on, this is where also the bylaw builds in the flexibility for places like the Advisory Council on Public Health to help kind of determine that, because there could be situations where that changes based on how healthcare is set up. Like I said, if the Minuteman Clinic was established. So it's actually where like care is being delivered, even though I'm a pharmacist, and I think that's all.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up, Mr. Silber?
No, just thank you for the clarification.
Oh, okay.
You're welcome.
Ms. Roberts?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Susie Roberts, Precinct 17. I just am very supportive of this, but I had a question about signage and the practical effectiveness of a ban that no one may know about unless they walk into a restaurant or healthcare facility and there's a little sign that says something. Did see a reference to signage somewhere, but it hasn't been spoken of tonight. I'm just curious about that. Thank you.
Is Mr. Ishak going to be our legal expert on this too? Or is this town council is going to be our legal expert on this? I'll choose town council.
Joe Callahan, Town Council. So we could provide signage. We could add that requirement. And since Anthony, the petitioner, answered the question about pharmacies, I was able to look at the bylaw and I feel comfortable with his explanation. So although I dodged the first one, I'm doing both. So.
Signage is good. We can have signage.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Okay, we've run through the speakers, we've run through the questions. So I think we're ready for a vote on the motion that you've heard about is on pages 17.8 through 17.10. A yes vote is to amend the bylaw to restrict firearms in the places you heard about, and a no vote is to keep things the way they are. Okay, drop the vote. Please hold your applause so the town clerk can hear the tally, and then you can jump up and down, yell and scream to your heart's content for a little bit.
Okay. 217-09.
Motion passes 217-09. Okay, moving on. I think we've done 5 articles in an hour and 20 minutes. Can we keep it up? Okay, so we're moving on to Articles 18 and 19. We're going to be debating them together since they're kind of related. The motion on 18 is on pages 1812 to 1817. The motion on 19 is on pages 1906 to 1908. 18 amends the bylaws for sustainable food packaging, and 19 amends the bylaws for sustainable bags. And first up is Ms. Hochberg.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Brenda Hochberg, Town Meeting Member Precinct 2, together with co-petitioners Louise Bowditch and Clint Richmond, Town Meeting Member Precinct 6. We're bringing you warrant articles 18 and 19 on single-use plastics. Next slide. We are in a global environmental and health crisis related to plastics. The amount of plastics produced every year has been climbing, and plastic never goes away. It breaks down into nanoparticles, microplastics, which have been found in the most remote places on Earth and inside our bodies. And by reducing single-use plastics, we can make a small contribution to mitigating that crisis. Next slide, please. So warrant Article 18 first, sustainable food packaging. Next slide. So this is basically takeout food containers, and we have a current bylaw regulating these. The current bylaw requires that packaging be reusable or recyclable, biodegradable, or compostable, and caterers are exempt. So the bylaw is doing a good job, but there's some opportunities for improvement, and we have 5 areas that we are making proposed changes to the bylaw. Next slide, please. First is skip the stuff for takeout orders. So with skip the stuff, a restaurant cannot give you a fistful of plastic utensils and single-use condiment packets unless you specifically request those. This saves the restaurant money and it reduces waste. One Brookline restaurant that voluntarily implemented skip the stuff reported that 76% of takeout orders do in fact skip the stuff, so it's very effective. Skip the stuff's been adopted in California and many communities in Massachusetts, including Newton, and is the subject of a proposed state law. Next slide, please. Next is black plastic takeout containers. These are surprisingly not recyclable. They appear recyclable with their little chasing arrow symbol on the back and a number, but due to limitations of the optical scanners at the recycling sorting facility, they are kicked out of the recycling process, and they're therefore not compliant with the current bylaw. Nonetheless, many Brookline restaurants are still putting takeout orders into black plastic containers. And to help with education and enforcement of the current bylaw, we're going to spell it out and explicitly ban black plastic takeout containers. Next slide, please. We have an exemption for caterers currently, and what the warrant article does is it removes that exemption to put caterers and restaurants under the same rules. And there would be an exemption, though, if a caterer needed to use different kind of packaging for food safety reasons. Next slide, please. The health department, with whom we collaborated closely creating these warrant articles, asked that we include a portion cup exemption. You see there what these look like. They are pretty commonly used with takeout orders. And they are actually often made of recyclable material, but due to their small size, they cannot be processed at the recycling facility. And there's no comparable, affordable alternative that restaurants can use. So the health department asks that we make them as exempt so that they don't have to be enforcing something that's rather unenforceable. Next slide, please. And finally, new definitions for biodegradable and compostable. For example, compostable, the new definition would require that the item be marked with a certification for home or industrial composting, so that when you're home looking at this item and you're not sure whether to put it in the compost bin, you will be confident because of the marking on there. Next slide, please. These are some notes on how we can help businesses comply. The health department will continue providing sourcing information, and activists could work with the business community on things like skip the stuff placards for restaurants and negotiating supplier discounts. Next slide, please. We're frequently asked, what are alternatives to black plastic takeout containers? There are numerous alternatives listed here, and many of them are of a similar cost. So they're very acceptable alternatives. And we have not heard of opposition from restaurants. We have looped in the business community and incorporated their feedback. And in fact, several of these provisions are favorable to businesses. Skip the stuff and the portion cup exemption reduce their costs, for example. Next slide, please. Moving on to warrant article 19. sustainable bags. Next slide, please. So we have had a plastic bag ban in place in town since 2012. It's been through a few iterations, so we are now ready for another one. So our plastic bag ban does not currently reach small retailers and restaurants. And in spite of those exemptions, based on a survey, only 16% of businesses, including those exempt businesses, are still using single-use plastic. Next slide, please. So we propose to remove those exemptions, and we would be joining the vast majority of Massachusetts communities that already have a complete retail ban on plastic bags. And we're allowing 2 years as a phase-in. Next slide, please. Alternatives to plastic film bags are more expensive. However, a lot of consumers are now bringing their own bags or just saying, I don't need a bag. So that's a savings to the businesses, and businesses can charge for bags. And in fact, several in our survey we found were charging. And in terms of the business community, there's no opposition that we're aware of, and they are interested in solutions to pool their purchasing power. So that's something that we could work on together. Next slide, please. So warrant articles 18 and 19 were drafted closely with Department of Health and Public Works, and they've been recommended by a long list of town bodies and civic groups, and over 200 Brookline residents signed a petition in favor. Thank you, and please vote yes on warrant articles 18 and 19.
Thank you. I didn't mention who were the moving parties, so it's moved by Ms. Hochberg and seconded by Ms. Jonas. And now I'm recognizing Ms. Jonas.
Whoops. Hello, I'm Elisa Jonas again, Town Meeting Member Precinct 16, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Advisory Committee. Recommending by almost unanimous margins the town meeting vote in favor of both Articles 18 and 19. The Advisory Committee appreciates the work of Mothers Out Front and the petitioners for moving our community to further reduce our use of plastics. We recommended only 2 substantive amendments, but they are procedural, technical, and very dry. And if you're interested, you can read about them in the combined reports. During our discussion of the warrant articles, a concern was expressed that retailers should not be burdened with additional costs at a time of uncertainty about tariffs. This could have an impact on caterers and smaller retailers who will now be subject to the requirements of the bylaw. But the petitioners, as Brenda mentioned, had reached out to both the Chamber of Commerce and Coolidge Corner Merchants Association and did not encounter any opposition, nor did the Advisory Committee receive letters of concern. And as Brenda also mentioned, Skip the Stuff should actually reduce costs for retailers. Another concern expressed was that regulating plastic products locally result in a patchwork of directives among municipalities. Petitioners pointed out that amending the bylaw would actually make Brookline's regulations more consistent with those of Newton and Cambridge, and that passage of the bylaw at the local level will provide support for passage of a similar bill that's currently at the State House. There was also a discussion about the adequacy of enforcement, given that black plastic containers continue to be used despite their prohibition. Sigal Reese, the director of the Department of Public Health, noted that the town had established a staff position for enforcement, but because it was part-time, it had been a revolving door, leaving enforcement inadequately staffed. The department recently joined a regional collaborative through which Brookline and Newton now share a full-time employee. It is hoped that this will result in more stability and resulting in greater capacity for enforcement. So some of you may have seen the colorful mosaic shown above from the Washington Post. It was made from plastic particles found in the stomach of a single sable shearwater bird on Lord Howe Island, 360 miles from Australia's coast. These birds have been plucking bits of plastic out of the ocean, mistakenly thinking they are food, eating them, and feeding them to their chicks Some birds were found to contain a fifth of their body weight in plastic. According to the environmental nonprofit Ocean Blue Project, an estimated 1 million birds are dying as a result of plastic ingestion every year. So on behalf of the birds and other living beings, the advisory committee recommends favorable action on warrant Article 18 by a vote of 19-1 to 4, and favorable action on warrant Article 19 by a vote of 20 to 2 to 1.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bernard Green, speaking for the Select Board on both warrant Articles 18 and 19. First of all, I have to say that there's very little in my remarks that hasn't already been said. But since I have difficulty editing it as I go along.
Well, you don't have to.
Well, just let me speak, okay? I'm trying to make a joke. I can't do that now. At any rate, you'll just have to put up with the fact that some of what I say is redundant. So with respect to disposable food serviceware, warrant Article 18 clarifies and updates the current bylaw to attempt to further reduce the demand for single-use disposable food serviceware, such as plates, cups, knives, forks, chopsticks, but not wooden chopsticks, which are really, really helpful. And other items used to prepare, package, or consume food and other disposable items, including packing material in delivery services. Such items are banned if they are not biodegradable, compostable, or recyclable. Warrant Article 18 would revise bylaw 83.1 to include a number of new or updated definitions. And that was already discussed, so I won't go into that. I also won't talk about black plastic or single-use condiment packets. Portion cups that are small, non-recyclable plastic cups used for condiments are exempt, as are other food safety products that are exempt. With respect to plastic bags, warrant Article 19 expands the applicability of the current ban on plastic bags by eliminating exemptions for smaller retail establishments and restaurants and updating definitions of reusable checkout bags and reusable product bags and compostable bags. Retail establishments that provide checkout bags or product bags must provide a recyclable paper bag or a reusable checkout bag, and product bags must be either recyclable paper, reusable product bags, or compostable. So, in conclusion, the Small Business Development Committee supported both warrant Articles 18 and 19 on environmental grounds, though they noted concerns about enforcement and impacts on businesses. The committee noted also that there was limited direct restaurant consultation on warrant Article 18, although previous speakers indicated that there was no feedback or no objections. The Chamber of Commerce and Coolidge Corner Merchants Association were also consulted with no opposition. The Advisory Committee on Public Health also voted favorable action on both warrant articles. And in my last 4 seconds, the Select Board voted 5-0 on both warrant Article 18 and warrant Article 19. 2 seconds over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Mr. Lynn Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Sean Lynn Jones, town meeting member from Precinct 1 and president of the Brookline Green Space Alliance. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Brookline Green Space Alliance, which wholeheartedly recommends favorable action on Articles 18 and 19. Now, unlike some previous speakers, I will not repeat any of the points that have been made already, but I will relay an anecdote, which I think is worth thinking about. I recently met someone, and when I told them that I was from Brookline, they said, "Oh, wow, you're from Brookline. Brookline has banned plastic bags. That is so great. I'm trying to get my community to do the same." And I think it's important to note that when I said I was from Brookline, what did they think about? They didn't think about our schools, our police, our firefighters, our parks and open space, our representative town meeting, or even our trash collection. No, the first thing that they thought about was that Brookline is a leader when it comes to banning plastics, and they hope to emulate Brookline. So I think this is an important anecdote to think about, because it shows that when we take actions like this, when we vote favorable action on Articles 18 and 19, we can inspire and motivate other people, other communities, and I hope, Representative Vitolo, the state legislature, as mentioned by a previous speaker. Oh, I'm sorry, I did break my rule, but I did want to get the state action in there. Viewed narrowly, these bylaw amendments can be seen as small steps in the right direction. But when you look at them more broadly, these articles are part of a global movement against plastics. Let's keep Brookline at the forefront of that movement. Please vote favorable action. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take it. We have 3 speakers left. They're all in favor. I see Mr. Fry at the microphone. And I see another gentleman at the microphone. So let's have a vote on calling the question. Oh, I'm sorry. Laura Knott, Tracy Burns, Audrey Chang, who's the Brookline High School junior.
I have just one clarification
Yes.
question, if I can be allowed.
Give me the
Hugh
question.
Joseph, Precinct 15. On the plastic bag ban, I just wanted to understand if I'm correct that if we ban the plastic bag, I think the outcome of that is actually in the bag, but allow substitutions such as paper bags and that's okay, even if they're a single disposable product with as great a footprint as a plastic bag, or is there a move to do something more broadly?
I think that's beyond, I've called for a vote, and I think we're going to proceed with the vote. So this is a vote to terminate debate, calling the question. Drop the vote, please. And if this passes, we'll be voting 18 and 19 separately.
Okay, 193-27-7.
Okay, the motion passes. 193 yes, 27 no, 7 abstentions. So the first vote will be on the Article 18 main motion, which starts on page 1812 and runs through page 1817. And a yes vote is to amend the bylaw to ban some food packaging, as you heard in the debate. So everyone clear on what we're voting for? Okay, drop the vote.
U24-5.
Motion passes 224 to 2 no, 5 abstentions. We now move on to Article 19. This is the to amend the bylaw for sustainable bags, as you heard. The motion begins on page 19.6 and runs through page 19.8. Up, sub one number. No, page 19.6. Okay. Drop the vote.
Okay. 225, 5.
Motion passes 220 yes, 5 no, 5 abstentions. Okay, continuing on. Article 21. The motion is on page Article 21, Supplement 2, pages 2 and 3. The motion is by Mr. Doty and is seconded by Mr. Van Scoyac. Mr. Steigman, petitioner, is the first speaker up. You have the slides for Mr. Steigman? They changed. Yeah. We're just getting the presentation. And they seem to have found it, so that's good. Okay.
All right, this one's worth the wait. Great to see everybody. Philip Steigman. I am speaking on behalf of myself, not a town meeting member. And just want to talk a little bit about our warrant article 21. Originally a bylaw, but through discussions with town partners and commissions, it became clear that a resolution that works toward the goals of the commission would be the best way forward. And that resolution directs that the Department of Health and Human Services CHIP plan includes activities that advance the purposes of the warrant article and direct the town administrator to further advance the purposes through convening of town and school departments, the housing authority, and other partners, and to the extent that non-town entities are willing to collaborate as well. So what exactly are we talking about when we talk about this warrant article? First, just to do introductions real quick. Next slide, please. I am here with my legendary compatriots and co-petitioners, Sarah Mokhtar and Alec Lebovitz. And when we talk about this warrant article, our vision is a future in which all Brookline children are thriving, supported by a coordinated ecosystem of partners committed to healthy development, thriving, well-being, and doing it together. When you look at communities, they play a valuable role in promoting healthy development and well-being. While our resources are robust, with more coordination, we could ensure that children are thriving from birth all the way through young adulthood. Now, why is this a problem? Because 15% of middle school students and 28% of high school students are experiencing persistent sadness. Next slide, please. Sorry, I forgot to move on. Next slide, please. And one more. Thank you. So the strategy would be to coordinate all of our ecosystem partners. We're talking about our town departments, our childcare programs, after-school programs, all to come together under a framework or a common definition of what young people need. I think we have a tendency to say, once we're done with early childhood, brain development is, those most important years of brain development have happened. Now we're going to have the schools take care of it. And the schools say, okay, no, we really need to focus on things like third grade reading and our MCAS scores and high school graduation. So this is a strategy that would say healthy development is the strategy that undergirds all of that academic learning. And it's something we need to think about when we think about those issues with well-being and mental health and belonging, as we've heard from some of the earlier presentations tonight. This strategy would ensure continuity as children move from preschool into kindergarten and from fifth grade into middle school and into high school and beyond, and address gaps such as lower access for children from lower socioeconomic status to programs and services that our town offers. Next slide, please. Here is the robust ecosystem of partners that we have. Just take a look at all of these, if we can imagine rowing together under one strategy. We have a robust ecosystem. This is the opportunity that we would have to work together. Next slide, please. When we're done with our ecosystem and children are ready to sort of age out, what does thriving really look like? And these are just some examples of things that are beyond high school graduation or having a job. It's a life of meaning. It's a life of community connection. Next slide, please. Potential activities for whatever sort of role this would take. This is originally for a commission, would have been really identifying what thriving looks like and outcomes, things like connectedness, things like positive relationships with caring adults. Next slide, please. Just a few more. Joint trainings, for instance, that all of our service providers and town departments, libraries, parks could participate in to get together. Excuse me. Next slide, please. What could it look like in practice? Let's say a preschool teacher realizes, hey, this is a child that could use some support. I have this relationship with the Brookline Center. Let's make a referral. And there's just some other examples on that slide as well. Just moving fast because I'm running out of time. 2 more slides, please. Sample indicators of thriving. Just some examples of what thriving looks like that we could be focusing on through this strategy. My time is up, so I'm going to finish up. But thank you very much for considering our resolution, and we hope you vote for it.
Thank you. Mr. Banker.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dick Benka, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 14, speaking for the Committee on Town Organization and Structure, urging support for the resolution set forth in the orange CTO&S supplement. CTO&S wholeheartedly supports the goals of Warrant Article 21, which would have established a commission on thriving children and youth. But we were presented with 3 problems outlined more fully in our report. First, the commission would have had no authority to compel action or even participation in its meetings by relevant service providers. Second, the town administrator indicated that staffing and funding would not be available to a commission, but that the Brookline Health Department would be undertaking a community health improvement plan in the coming fiscal year that would, among other objectives, address the issues regarding well-being of children and youth. And third, an opinion from town council and subsequent discussions with him made clear that a commission would be a particularly ineffective entity to research and pursue these issues. Town council's opinion attached to the CTO&S Orange Report
stated that the open meeting law would prevent even two commission members, less than a quorum, from collaborating in a working group outside of the commission's public meetings, even if their only purpose were to research and bring materials to the commission for consideration and action. All of this led CTONS to create the compromise resolution you have before you, requesting that the select board ensure that the community health improvement plan in fact address the issues raised by Article 21 as promised by the town administrator, and also requesting that the select board pursue convenings of the parties who provide services to children and youth as contemplated in the original warrant article. I want to thank the petitioners, Alec Leibovitz, Sarah Mogtader, and Philip Steigman, and also Sigal Reese, who was the Director of Public Health and Human Services, for their good faith in working with CTONS to reach agreement on the resolution you now have before you. Please support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Scoyac.
This time I have far more time than I'm going to need. Mr. Steigman has done a very good job of explaining the goals, very worthy goals of the originally proposed Commission on Thriving Youth. Mr. Benka has done an excellent job of describing the they're more than concerns. They're real problems with the commission approach to achieving the goals. The select board, as of just about an hour and a half ago, in recognition of the good work done by CTOS and the advisory committee and the original petitioners, to coalesce around an article that in substitution for the original petition takes these goals and urges upon the town administrator and the select board that they then work with the Department of Public Health and Human Services and other relevant departments in the town to advance these goals in every respect. And with that assurance, the select board is unanimously in favor of the article as revised by the CTOS and the advisory committee.
And before you go, tell us who you are.
Gosh, I'm John Van Scoyac from the select board, and thank you for that reminder.
Thank you. Mr. Birnbaum, and just one more speaker after this.
I'm Ben Birnbaum. I am an at-large member of the advisory committee, and I live in Precinct 9. I was a member of the subcommittee of the advisory committee that first looked at the proposal, what would have been a bylaw of, if forgive me my eyesight, Article 21, which began as a bylaw that would have established the Commission on, quote, Thriving Children and Youth, unquote, that would bring together representatives of the town, the schools, civic offices, and philanthropic organizations to identify, address, and collaborate on development issues facing Brookline's children. A very virtuous goal. The subcommittee, though, that first sat and heard Article 21 voiced concerns that Dick Benka has mentioned that you already heard, and so I will not go over them. In fact, if I could tell Bernard Green or show Bernard Green what I then do with pieces of paper that had stuff, I am not going to bother to say because it's been said. This is what I do on that.
And everyone appreciates that, Mr. Birnbaum.
I appreciate it too. In friendship, Bernard. So rather than build the, I must say, klutzy and costly structure that would have been would have come out of that the first version of the draft, I'll say, of the warrant article. We had our friend here, Mr. Benka, who never stops himself from leaping on his horse and heading off to the battle. And he then came and did something that I thought was quite remarkable and important. And I think because of these dark times, it seemed to be remarkable and important. He got together with the petitioners, with Sigal Reese, who would have carried a great burden and will carry some burden on this, and with Chaz and others, and worked out something that everybody was happy with. They weren't entirely happy with it. That is, not everybody was entirely happy, but that's politics. You work out something that people end up agreeing with, and we have that here in this resolution. Now, resolutions of which Brookline Town Meeting never tires, as you may have observed, mostly are driven, or they are driven by idealism and by hope, which is a great thing. But they can sometimes appear naive and even foolish. I am old enough to recall.
Please conclude. The
Gentleman standing here in my place some years ago, asking us to pass a resolution against spanking. We did pass the resolution because we were.
Mr. Birnbaum.
Well, come on. History is history, my friend. Let's not forget it. He wanted to come back the next year and do something similar with circumcision. And for some reason, it never got through the town clerk's office. I don't know why.
Okay, Mr. Birnbaum.
All right. The resolution on the floor this evening is fueled by idealism and hope, and particularly by hope for our children and grandchildren, and particularly in these trying times.
Mr. Birnbaum.
So I will now go to my third page,
But you'll yield the floor
which you
to.
can see is quite full. And it says, the
It
advisory
says you should be done.
recommends favorable action on warrant Article 21 by a unanimous and hopeful vote of 19-0.
Thank you.
you all very much.
Find it amusing that somehow the conversation got to spanking and circumcision. Mr. Lebovitz, last speaker on this, last signed up speaker. Hopefully brief.
Always a tough act to follow my friend, Mr. Birnbaum, but thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. Alec Lebovitz, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 8, member of the Advisory Committee, speaking as a petitioner of Warrant Article 21. The petitioners are pleased that we've reached a compromise on a substitute motion under Warrant Article 21, with particular thanks to Dick Benka for his yeoman's work on forging the compromise. That clearly expresses our community's commitment to supporting the healthy and full development of all Brookline youth, as well as calling for 2 concrete steps that the town can take in the short term towards achieving this aspirational goal. Including youth development and thriving as a cross-cutting theme during Community Health Improvement Plan implementation will help the town to align our ongoing public health and social services initiatives with our goal to create an environment where all young people can thrive. And calling a convening of youth development stakeholders, we hope will begin the laborious process of improving communication, the sharing of best practices, and integration within a complex and sometimes fragmented environment of private providers, town departments, parents, youth organizations, nonprofits, and other key partners. These are tangible actions that we can take together, and I hope town meeting will endorse these steps forward with a vote of favorable action on Warrant Article 21 tonight. It's no secret that the petitioners of this article had initially hoped for more. We were motivated to bring this article out of a recognition that Brookline's young people are facing unprecedented challenges in an environment where our public school system is being asked to take on more responsibilities while existing resources are stretched thin. We believe that the town should take on more of the burden of ensuring Brookline's youth can thrive and flourish, particularly outside of the classroom. We were encouraged to find that all of the many reviewing boards this article came before agreed with our diagnosis of the problem, even as they raised valid concerns with our initially proposed solution. As I hope you support this compromise motion tonight, I ask that if this problem resonates with you as well, please join us in thinking creatively about how the town, and not just the schools, can engage more actively in creating an environment where all Brookline youth can feel safe and supported and thrive now and in the future. Thank you, and I ask for your vote in support of warrant Article 21. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's all the signed up speakers we have. So I think we're ready for a vote on Article 21, which is now turned into a resolution, which appears on Article 21, Supplement 2, pages 2 and 3. So a yes vote is to accept the resolution, and a no vote is not to. So I think we're ready for a vote. Here we go.
Two, 10, 0, 12.
Vote passes 210, yes, 0, no, and 12 abstentions. Moving on to Article 23. The motion is on pages 23.6 through 23.9. And originally, this was a bylaw amendment, which has turned into a resolution, which you'll hear about, and it specifies timely bylaw updates. The motion is made by Mr. Toffel, seconded by Mr. Gordon. Mr. Toffel.
Thank you. Mike Toffel, Town Meeting Member Precinct 8, speaking as a petitioner of Article 23. Democracy and the rule of law requires that town meeting members and all those living and doing business in our town be easily able to understand the current version of Brookline's bylaws. Unfortunately, Brookline's general bylaws on our town website are updated only as of 2020. They're 5 years out of date. To learn about the new and modified bylaws that we town meeting have passed and that received Attorney General approval since 2020 requires sorting through 160 pages of correspondence between the Attorney General and town and clicking on several links. This is a mess that our current town clerk inherited several years ago. It's this mess that motivated Alec and me to begin engaging with the town clerk 2 years ago and to write this warrant article a few months ago. The good news is that our town clerk agrees that the situation is unacceptable and has been working for several years to fix it. He's fixed this with the zoning bylaws, which are now current and promptly updated. Our town clerk has told us he will bring the same solution for our general bylaws to our special town meeting this fall for a vote. We're grateful for this work and look forward to him meeting that deadline. We originally drafted this warrant article as a bylaw proposal that we've switched to a resolution for 2 reasons. First, the situation is fluid and moving in the right direction, and we want to support the town clerk's efforts and timeframe and avoid modifying our bylaw until things settle down. Second, we negotiated an alternative solution that leverages the 1-year-old memorandum of understanding between the town clerk, the select board, town administrator, and moderator that documents their commitments to keep town meeting members informed on the follow-up actions after we at town meeting pass bylaws, resolutions, and home rule petitions. Specifically, the town clerk and moderator agreed to amend the MOU to incorporate both of the objectives described in the warrant article. The revised MOU now commits the town clerk to ensure that 2 things happen within 10 days of the Attorney General notifying the town that the AG has approved our new and modified bylaws. 1, that our bylaws website is updated in a clear manner that makes it easy for anyone to gain an accurate understanding of our current bylaws. And 2, to notify town meeting members when those bylaw updates are made. I appreciate the efforts of the town clerk and the moderator in helping us develop this solution. I encourage you to vote yes on our motion under Article 23 and to familiarize yourself with the MOU that's in the combined reports to understand the commitments that the town clerk, select board, and moderator have made to keep town meeting and the public better informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon. Mr. Bors.
Good evening, Harry Bors for the Advisory Committee. This article was born out of a frustration in that Brookline's bylaws have not been clearly accessible in an updated, cohesive manner anyway for some time. And the petitioners brought the article, as you heard, originally as an amendment, though now as a resolution, and really to be a catalyst to have our bylaws posted in a timely manner and clearly denoted in an easily accessible document. The petitioners, when they spoke with us, noted that one cannot expect participatory democracy if citizens don't really have access to the laws governing them. The AC heard their frustrations, and we were wholly sympathetic. In reviewing the original amendment, however, it was pointed out that it addressed only the general bylaws, not the zoning bylaws, which would have posed an obvious imbalance, that the original wording provided some ambiguity as to what constituted timely posting, and importantly, that we do not legislate performance metrics, as this originally would have. That's done really through policy and management. Appreciating these concerns, the petitioners returned with a resolution, and it is their resolution, which is now the main motion before us. Now, as a brief background, as we heard when Mr. Kaufman arrived here some time ago, there was a lack of cohesive, updated bylaws. That was the norm. Collating and reformatting them is no small undertaking, and he has been working on those. However, understandably, it sometimes takes a back seat to things like running town elections. So the degree of attention can be necessarily episodic. Updates have been posted individually with cross-references, but there is no cohesive document that people can refer to. That said, our zoning bylaws have been completed and posted. And this was done in collaboration with General Code. That's the company that we use and most other municipalities in the state use. Town clerk has now completed the work on the general bylaws. That draft has been circulated to various departments and boards and commissions for vetting and accuracy. Once done, that document will be submitted to town meeting, us, for ratification in the fall. Assuming we do, it will then be submitted to the AG, and assuming AG approval, likely be fully live in 2026. We agree with the petitioners that indeed an informed democracy requires access to timely information. The resolution before us allows town meeting to express itself and underscore the urgency and the importance of this, and to voice support for the town clerk having the resources needed for his office. By a vote of 20 to 0 to 3, the advisory committee is recommending favorable action.
Thank you, Mr. Warren.
Paul Warren speaking for the select board. I have exited out almost my entire remarks. You're welcome. The select board acknowledges both the importance of transparency and the operational reality of running elections and managing competing responsibility in the clerk's office. That's for you, Ben. We are pleased that this resolution reinforces accountability while also respecting the flexibility needed to implement long-term improvements like the online implementation dashboard and the consolidated digital bylaw platform expected to launch in 2026. The resolution strikes the right balance. It codifies our values without imposing rigid mandates. It supports the town clerk's work while signaling to town meeting that and the public that timely access to our laws is critical. The select board unanimously recommends favorable action. Thank you.
Mr. Ananian.
C. Scott Ananian, town meeting member, precinct 10. I have a quick question. I'm just curious why town meeting is going to have to ratify the amended bylaws. Are there changes to wording or something that we need to approve? What is the process? I did check the combined reports. I didn't see an answer there. Thanks.
Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you, Ben Kaufman, Town Clerk. As part of the codification project, we didn't simply take our existing bylaw and copy them into general code. We actually went under a full legislative review to find typos, old language, incorrect cross-references, and improper numberings within our bylaws to correct them. So once we are complete, we'll actually have a much more accurate and up-to-date and accessible bylaw, which is why it also took considerably longer. It wasn't just a simple copy and paste. However, whenever you're changing anything, even adding or taking away a comma in the bylaws, it has to be approved by town meeting. So that's why it's going to come back before town meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. And thank you, Mr. Ananian. Good question. Okay, I think we're ready for a vote on the motion that starts on page 23.6 and goes to 23.9. A vote yes is to approve the resolution. Okay, ready? Drop the vote whenever you're ready. Here we go.
Okay, 219-1-4.
Motion passes 219-1-4. Moving on to Article 24. And we finally have one with a little bit of controversy. So we have the main motion, which is on pages 2415 through 2421, moved by Mr. Lebovitz, who you see here. And he's assuming is going to be the first speaker, but I guess you're assuming correctly.
Excellent.
Seconded by Mr. Warren. And then there's a competing substitute motion, which would be voted first. I'm starting on page, actually, it's on page 24-30. It converts Mr. Lebovitz's motion into a resolution. And that one is moved by Mr. Dowdy and seconded by Mr. Pollock down. Okay. Okay, Mr. Lebovitz, why don't you tell us about this?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. Alec Lebovitz, Town Meeting Member Precinct 8, speaking on behalf of the petitioners of Warrant Article 24, a home rule petition seeking authorization for Brookline to implement a real estate transfer fee to generate new revenue for affordable housing investments and town operations. Next slide, please. If approved by the legislature, Warrant Article 24 would allow town meeting to implement a fee of between 0.5% to 2% on transfers of real property with at least the first $1 million in property value exempted completely from the fee's assessment. The fee would be assessed marginally, meaning only the non-exempted value of a property would be subject to the fee. As written, Warrant Article 24 would allow town meeting flexibility to set the value exemption floor at any amount above $1 million, including potentially variable fee rates at multiple value exemption levels. This would allow us to construct a transfer fee program that does not place an undue burden on low or moderate income residents or income restricted seniors. Such a program, if authorized in Brookline, would have the potential to bring in millions in new annual revenues to support critical housing investments made through our Affordable Housing Trust, as well as our strained town operations budget. Next slide. This table presents revenue projections of what Brookline could have realized if this fee had been in place during 2022. As you can see, at fee rates ranging between 0.5% and 2%, and minimum value exemptions ranging from the $1 million minimum up to $3 million, Brookline would have realized between 1.1 and 14.3 million in new revenues from the narrowest to broadest versions of the transfer fee. In our position of structural deficit, where critical services are facing level budgets or cuts, and our ability to invest in affordable housing is deeply constrained, this new revenue would be transformational. Additionally, you can see that the value exemption for a transfer fee would have exempted between 44% of all transfers at the $1 million level and over 90% of transfers at the $3 million level. Next slide. Warrant Article 24 includes a number of exemptions from the proposed fee, including for the death of a family member, the dissolution of marriage, government transfers, and transfers from senior circuit breaker recipients, among others. Crucially, this article also provides flexibility authority to design new exemptions as desired to ensure that any final program is fair and avoids unintended consequences. This article also clarifies that the payment of the fee should be borne by the seller, with the town set to inform both parties of the fee amount before any property transfer. If approved by the legislature, town meeting would have the opportunity to design and approve a transfer fee program within the flexible parameters of this article before any fee would take effect, ensuring that this body will have significant input into the final program design. Next slide. One key advantage of the transfer fee as compared to other revenue measures is its inherently progressive structure. The fee would only be assessed at the point of sale of real property when its value has been liquidated, which will mitigate its impact on residents as compared to an annual property tax increase. Additionally, the value exemption will allow town meeting to decide where a reasonable property value floor should be to prevent hardship for our residents.
Please conclude.
Be it, Mr. Moderator, I believe I have 5 minutes requested for this, set to 3. Should, to prevent hardship for residents, be it $1 million, $2 million, or higher. This will allow the town to see significant revenue returns, even while ensuring that the majority of property owners in Brookline are partially or completely exempt from the transfer fee. And all revenue generated by this fee will be split evenly between the Affordable Housing Trust and the town's general fund, shoring up our municipal finances and housing investment capacity. Next slide. The advisory committee has proposed substituting the main motion with a resolution. The petitioners strongly believe that a home rule petition is a better path forward. Town meeting passed a similar home rule petition in 2019, and a home rule petition would align Brookline with 19 other communities in support of this policy. Further, the home rule petition represents a stronger advocacy tool than a resolution to push for state action. The petitioners were advised to bring a home rule petition for this reason by Senate Majority Leader Cream's staff. And this would follow the logic supported by town meeting last year when we passed a home rule petition to encourage state action on the regulation of eschar rodenticides. Additionally, should a multi-town pilot be considered, as was done with fossil fuel-free rezoning, being a community with a pending home rule petition could preference Brookline's participation in such a program. And finally, given this policy is now supported by the governor and a similar bill passed the state Senate last year, the transfer fee is closer to final passage than ever before, making this the opportune political moment for Brookline to reaffirm our support for this policy. Final slide, please.
Please conclude now.
The petitioners ask that you join with the unanimous Select Board, the Housing Advisory Board, the unanimous Economic Development Advisory Board, and the unanimous Advisory Council on Public Health in supporting favorable action on Warrant Article 24 as a home rule petition. Please vote no action on the AC substitute motion and favorable action on the main motion. Thank you.
Mr. Dowdy.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dennis Dowdy, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 3 and Advisory Committee Chair, speaking for a divided advisory committee in support of its substitute motion under Warrant Article 24. As noted in our report, the committee is largely divided on the idea of the real estate transfer tax, at least as currently proposed. The arguments in favor have echoed what you've heard from the proponents, and the arguments against are laid out in the report, but can be summarized as concerns around equity. For example, who ends up paying the tax, what an appropriate threshold for applying it would be, and whether it's reasonable to adjust the taxable amount, perhaps by accounting for the economics of the transaction, including closing costs, broker's fees, or extant mortgages. It should be noted that in 2019, town meeting did previously vote 139 to 44 to 17 favorable action on an article that asked the select board to submit a similar but not identical home rule petition to the state legislature. But while the committee may be divided on the overall value of a real estate transfer tax, it is not particularly divided on this question. If you support the transfer tax, how should you express that support? Should you support a home rule petition, as in the main motion here, or support it in the form of a resolution as per our substitute motion? And we have often been skeptical of home rule petitions, taking our guidance from State Representative Vitolo, who routinely advises to submit home rule petitions, A, when you know exactly what you want, or at a minimum would be comfortable with getting exactly what you ask for, rather than feeling confident that there could be additional time to negotiate parameters. And B, when there is something unique to Brookline. And Representative Vitolo, during our hearing, additionally indicated that this subject matter, granting town-specific taxing authority, was not typically considered an appropriate use of home rule petitions. So some members supported converting this warrant article into a resolution on general principle, irrespective of their support for or antipathy towards the proposed real estate transfer tax. And some supported the transfer tax, but would prefer the process to be to urge the legislature to enact real estate transfer tax legislation as recently proposed by the governor and adopted by the Senate. So as a result, a supermajority of the committee recommended amending warrant article 24 into resolution form, resulting in the substitute motion before you tonight. By the narrowest of margins, 11 to 10, the advisory committee recommends favorable action on this substitute motion.
Thank you. Mr. Homer. And then Mr. Seufer will be next.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Charles Homer, precinct member, town meeting member, precinct 8, and also chair of the Advisory Council on Public Health, initially speaking on behalf of the Advisory Council and subsequently speaking for myself, and I'll clarify the difference. The Advisory Council on Public Health considered this when 100% of the value of this would have gone to the Affordable Housing Trust. However, we continue to support it with the 50-50 split with town general revenues. You might ask, why would a Public Health Council weigh in on a matter related to taxation and related to housing? You should notice that living conditions are in fact the most significant driver of health outcomes, both in Brookline and across the nation. So clearly has been stated by by Sigal Reese, who is the head of our Department of Public Health. Over the last several years, Brookline residents and leaders have identified housing affordability as a top health priority through the Community Health Assessment and then subsequently the Community Health Improvement Plan. What type of data support this? Approximately 35% of Brookline residents are housing burdened. That is, they spend more than 30% of their income on housing. And when you look at individuals in our town who live at less than 80% of area median income, and for your interest, that is an income of approximately $130,000 for a family of 4. Over approximately half, or 47% of Brookline residents, spend more than 50% of their income providing on housing. That leaves far less for them to pursue other matters that are important for their health, including purchase of food. Substantial resources are needed to develop, build, or preserve deeded affordable housing, and this is one very important source for it. And creating, some people have objected to why would you want to create more affordable housing in high-income communities such as Brookline. In fact, there's very strong data, and I'm a pediatrician, that says, in fact, for children, it is better for a child of low income or any such income to live in a community such as Brookline. It provides greater opportunity for their educational advancement and the opportunities for them to be healthy throughout their lives. So that is speaking on behalf of the ACPH, now speaking for myself, and I would notice that I was one of the leaders of the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization's Housing Justice Campaign and spent the last 3 years working on behalf of GBIO to advocate for, among other things, the real estate transfer fee. As Mr. Leibovitz already commented and showed, even a 1% tax on sales over $1.5 million would generate as much as $5 million in a year for the town, divided between the town and the Affordable Housing Trust. Typical public subsidy for affordable housing is approximately $200,000 a unit. So if all of the funding came from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, that would allow us to create 12 more units a year. And typically, public funding comes from a variety of sources and not only the trust fund. And the fee is progressive, as was already noted, and occurs only at the time of sale. Finally, to address the issue of a resolution, Brookline is one of many cities and towns that are seeking to implement such a fee. You already heard about that. Just as with last year's second-generation anticoagulant rodenticide home rule petition, the goal is to influence the legislature to pass a bill, and there are a number of bills. The purpose of those bills is to enable those cities and towns that wish to implement a fee to have the authority to do so, and that is what we're looking for. Also, the legislature could pass a pilot as they did for fossil fuel free, and we want to be eligible for that. And if granted, town meeting will have the opportunity to fine-tune its levels of exemptions. So with that, I urge you to vote no action on the AC committee, AC vote for resolution, and to vote yes for the main motion. Thank you very much.
I have three speakers and then I'll go to questions. I have one question on a remote question, and then I see Mr. Davis. But before we get to Mr. Davis, Mr. Seufer.
Good evening. My name is Ariel Seufer, and I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 2. This article asks us to consider a real estate transfer tax. Let's consider a slightly different context. We tax tobacco for two reasons. First, to raise revenue. Second, to reduce tobacco usage. So what effects will a real estate transfer tax have? Naturally, it will create a disincentive to sell real estate. If fewer people are selling their real estate, the supply goes down, and elementary economics says that the price will go up. If we want affordable housing, we need to be taking the opposite tack. We need to be encouraging building of housing, and we need to be encouraging more housing transactions. This is not merely an abstraction. In New York, I'm helping my mom deal with her former primary residence. The real estate transfer tax there is substantial and makes it a lot harder for a senior like her to be able to manage the sale of her property, one of her primary venues of savings. And that is another reason to oppose Article 24. It will hurt our seniors and our most vulnerable populations at exactly the time that they can least afford it. This is true even with the $1 million exemption, notably not indexed for inflation, especially given that both so many middle-income persons use their home as a savings vehicle that they then sell to retire on, and the high housing prices in our neighborhood. Finally, this article would be easy to game. The wealthiest taxpayers would never have to pay anything under this article through the application of simple and well-understood techniques. I urge you to vote no action on the home rule petition main motion for Article 24.
Thank you. Mr. Warren?
Paul Warren speaking for the Select Board. I want to make one statement that's off my script because it's very important for an understanding about the home rule versus the resolution. When the petitioners brought this to the Select Board, Alec and I had a long conversation about the allocation of the revenue. And we had two discussions, the allocation of the revenue and also converting it to a resolution. We agreed, and Alec made and his petitioners made an important concession to split the revenue. It was 100% going to the Affordability Housing Trust, and we split it 50-50, 50 to the general fund and 50% to the Housing Trust Fund. And we agreed not to convert it to a resolution. So first, I want to thank the petitioners for making that agreement. And I feel, offering a resolution would actually go against the spirit of that agreement. The This measure, the select board supports this article because Brookline is facing increasing pressure on both affordability and fiscal sustainability. So we're having a hard time raising taxes for the general fund. This would help with that. The measure offers a targeted way to generate new revenue for both the general fund and the Affordability Housing Trust Fund without increasing property taxes across the board. That's really important. So this is a 50-50 split. We recognize the concerns, the select board recognized the concerns about potential market impacts that were just mentioned, administrative burden, and fairness, especially for seniors and homeowners with limited equity. These are valid concerns and were addressed in the article's design, which includes exemptions, flexibility in implementation, and safeguards for appeals and transparency. The article also received strong backing from the Advisory Council of Public Health, which emphasized the critical link between affordability, stable housing, and health outcomes, as well as the human services that we need to implement as well. Brookline's own Community Health Improvement Plan identifies housing affordability as one of our top priorities for improving residents' well-being. And I don't need to share with you, you already know the pressure that we have on our own general fund budget. So we could use the increased income. The select board voted unanimously for favorable action on Article 24. We ask that you vote no action on the resolution and favorable action on the petitioner's main motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Klein.
Good evening. I am Jonathan Klein. I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 17, a co-petitioner of warrant Article 24, and a member of the Housing Advisory Board, or the HAB. Tonight, I will report briefly on behalf of the HAB and then make some personal remarks. The HAB held its public hearing on March 19th. Petitioner Alec Leibowitz made a thoughtful presentation, as he did here tonight, followed by a detailed discussion, including a discussion of the benefits of a home rule petition versus a resolution. After the discussion, the HAB voted 6 in favor, 0 opposed, with 3 abstentions for favorable action on the warrant article as proposed by the petitioners. Now, I want to note that at the HAB's hearing and vote, that occurred before the select board amendment to devote half the proceeds to the Affordable Housing Trust and half to the town's general fund. While it's impossible to know with certainty whether the change would have affected the HAB's recommendation, my personal opinion is that the HAB would have absolutely supported the revised proposal, which, if approved by the legislature, would still provide very significant funding for the Affordable Housing Trust and at the same time would help with the town's other fiscal challenges. Now, my personal remarks. Many of you know I spent my career as a lawyer working to build and preserve affordable housing. And based on that experience, I can also tell you that affordable housing is very difficult and expensive to build. Yes, there are significant subsidies from the state and federal government, but frankly, in many cases, especially where land is expensive and costs are high as they are in Brookline, that's simply not enough. And that's where our Affordable Housing Trust comes in. Unfortunately, our Affordable Housing Trust has limited funding, especially compared to some of our peer communities like Cambridge or Boston, which provide much more local support for affordable housing developments. Now, I want to talk to you about 2 potential affordable housing developments in Brookline that, had the legislature approved our 2019 home rule petition, could now be completed and be providing housing here in Brookline. Incredibly, had we been authorized to collect the real estate transfer fee starting in 2019, we could have collected $37 million by now, more than enough to fund these 2 projects. That would have included 54 very low and low income senior rental units in Brookline Village at the Kent Station Street development, and 10 affordable 2- and 3-bedroom home ownership condominiums on Lancaster Terrace behind Temple Beth Zion. Now, I'll tell you about each one, trying not to go over my time. The town went through a complex process for the Kent Station Street, development. We authorized land disposition. We engaged a developer, Two Life Communities, and because of some complicated public bidding laws, it turned out that that project was going to be much more expensive than anyone anticipated. Had we had sufficient funds in the Affordable Housing Trust to fund it, that project could have gone forward, and I believe it would have gone forward. We did not have the funds that were needed, and that project was put on hold and remains on hold today. I also want to tell you, and that would have been 54 very low and low income senior housing units right in Brookline Village, fabulous location. The Lancaster Terrace development is different, but equally disappointing. Temple Beth Zion, where I'm a member, was working with the Brookline CDC and its partner, the Jamaica Plain Neighborhood Development Corporation, to build a 10-unit condominium development right behind the synagogue. It would have been 5 or 6 stories. It would have provided family housing, with units selling for $300,000 each instead of $1 million each. It was a terrific project. When the cost came in, because it was a difficult site to build in, we have small difficult sites here in Brookline, it turned out that the costs were too high and the developer pulled out. Again, had we had funding in the Affordable Housing Trust, had we had 5 or 10 or $15 million, not 2 or 3 or $4 million, I believe we could have convinced the developer to stay in that project. So I have 6 seconds left. So I urge you to vote no on the advisory committee substitute. I think a home rule petition is much more powerful and will weaken this. I urge you to vote favorable action on warrant Article 24 and make a strong statement to the legislature about our ability to create affordable housing here in Brookline. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a question from a remote attendee, Mr. Tuckman.
Hi, Jerry Tuckman.
You need to unmute. Is Mr. Tuckman gonna unmute Mr. Tuckman? If you don't unmute, we're going to skip you. Okay, we'll try to come back.
Can you hear me now? It wasn't working.
Okay. The technology isn't working, Mr. Tuckman. I think we're gonna have to pass on your question. I'm sorry.
It says.
Mr. Davis.
Jonathan Davis, Precinct 17. I have a technical question. Is there any allowance for, well, I won't put it that way. What if the seller's basis, that is simply the seller's cost, is equal to or greater than the sale price, how would the resolution apply there? And by the same token, how would the alternative that's being proposed apply in that situation?
Well, there is no alternative. It's just two ways of accomplishing the same thing.
Well,
but
how would each one apply?
do we know the answer to that? It'll come back to town meeting. This is posed as a local option. So, there's a lot. I don't think we know. Is that correct? I see some. Mr. Lebovitz, you're going to be our expert here?
I hope so. Thanks for the question. Alec Lebovitz, town meeting member, precinct 8. Just to be clear, both the transfer fee authorized under warrant Article 24, as well as the transfer fees authorized under the pending statewide legislation and the other 19 home rule communities, all base the calculation of the transfer fee on the sales price of any property transfer, not necessarily on the cost basis, if that addresses your question.
Okay, not necessarily on the extent of a profit. Okay.
Correct.
You answered my question. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Sir.
David Eber, Precinct 7. I have a quick comment and then a question. My quick comment is just that there was a speaker before who expressed a concern about the contrary housing effect of a transfer tax, that at a higher level, it may depress sales. I share that concern, and I suppose that at $1 million, I would not really sure how I would vote on this, but I believe that we have heard several times that before anything is put in place, town meeting would have a chance to, among other things, fix the threshold among the rate and maybe other issues that might address particular loopholes. So it seems to me I would support this knowing that I would eventually be looking at a much more fully baked proposal, which might address some of the concerns that people might have at $1 million.
Right.
My question is, I really don't know the answer to this question, which is on this issue of home rule petition versus the substitute motion, a resolution. I have heard and understand that there are issues. I must confess I don't fully understand them in detail about going to the legislature seeking home rule petitions. In some cases that can create some sort of issues. Maybe the legislature doesn't love that very much. Maybe it bodes poorly for what we're asking for. But the substitute is a mere resolution. And at least intuitively, it seems like a resolution will necessarily be even less effective than what might be a challenging home rule petition ask. But perhaps that's incorrect, and somehow you have a better chance of getting this before us.
Can someone address that question? Mr. Vitolo, who I know has some strong opinions on this topic. Now, whether he'll express them here is another story.
Representative 15th Borough District and Town Meeting Member. And while I have it, the house. All right, say that again. Sorry. I mute the chair or have someone to talk to it just so I can see. Yeah, there's no reason not to do that. You could try that. They can't hear Thomas. Oh, unmute it because we're sending audio.
They said, I said, any of the like 12 we've passed in the last 2 years. Now said.
Are you still not hearing Tommy? Are you getting Tommy now?
Here's what I think. I have paid for that. There is.
All right, okay.
Before what's the home rule here. So. There's the home. Here before that meeting, we'll get a hearing. The members of the committee will read the home.
We're sending 3 and 4.
It is also the case that the same members of the same committee would receive a letter from me explaining the resolution. And I promise you, 100% of them will come away with exactly the same understanding of Brookline's position. Now, I know a lot of people in this room feel like they understand the legislature better than the guy they hired to work there. And that's okay. Vote how you want. But if you want to know my opinion as someone who gets up every day, puts on a suit and goes there, that functionally, there is no difference to my colleagues whether or not we pass a home rule or a resolution. In either case, the members of the committee will understand what it is Brookline seeks and will make a judgment as to whether or not they are comfortable moving that out of committee. I will also say this. In the 6 years and 6 months that I have been a legislator, every time Brookline has passed a home rule that relates to Brookline doing something that doesn't affect a regional marketplace, doesn't affect policy outside the town, like moving a liquor license or building geothermal in one of Brookline's parks, or allowing us to build affordable housing without using the project subbid laws so that Colonel Floyd can be a remarkably green building, those have all passed. And every single home rule that relates to something that could be statewide legislation, but just doesn't happen to be, every single home rule where the impacts bleed over the town lines and affect a regional marketplace has failed to pass. 100% of the time in one case, 100% of the time in the other case. So here we are again, discussing a home rule that falls into the category of the latter. We have not seen a single one pass in the time I've been there. I advocate for them. I do my job. I work at it. I could be doing other things, but you have instructed me to do this thing, and I take that very seriously. And I have yet to find success on any one of them. That's my reality.
Thank you. I knew you had a strong opinion. Mr. Scheinen.
Thank you. Maxim Shainin, Precinct 6. Mr. Vitolo answered 2 of the 3 questions that I had. The last question that I had was, Is there any difference in terms of use of town's employees or town in general time and resources if a home rule petition is made versus if it's just a resolution?
I think Mr. Vitolo answered your question.
But is there anything beyond, like in terms of town employees, town staff doing work related to
It
the
goes to the legislature and the town employees are out of it, right? Or no? I heard a no.
May I?
Please, Mr. Carey.
Thank you. Chaz Carey, Town Administrator. The answer is sometimes. It's complicated. For example, the home rule petition, invoking Article 97 about the Pierce School project, staff spent a lot of time on that because it required action here, action in the legislature, action all over the place. So it depends on the subject matter. For something like this, obviously, if there was work that needed to be done, if a committee here in Brookline asked us to do work that was relevant to the home rule petition, and that the committee, like a legislative committee, needed, then we would do that work. So it's possible. But similarly, in support of a resolution, if a committee asked us to do that work, we might do that too. So it really depends on what it is.
Thank you.
Mr. Ebert.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Hebert, Precinct 7. I have two questions and a brief preface. So my understanding from this, or the math, is that this will generate somewhere between, at least in its current design, somewhere between 1.7 and $18 million a year in revenue if conditions remain the same. If we take the midpoint of that and say we'll generate about $10 million, well, then $5 million would go to the general fund and $5 million to the Affordable Housing Trust. So the first question is, given the 15 types of exemptions described in Section 3, items A through O, which include gifts, trusts, and LLCs, can we reliably expect, well, have the petitioners taken these exemptions into account in their mathematics, number one? And the second question is, we've heard a statistic tonight about how many people are housing challenged. So it's somewhere around 40%. And the question is might that $5 million or so be used to support those people in their plight or in their financial plight, or would it only be used to develop new housing?
Mr. Leibovitz, I think on the using, it will go to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the General Fund. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund has been, small portions have been used for other than creating housing for, then the General Fund, it's up to town meeting. But again, it's local option. So it would come back here, and then that's when the rubber would meet the road on what exemptions and how much, what the level's going to be, and anything else?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Alec Lebovitz, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 8. So in response to your first question, John, we were not able to perfectly capture all the exemptions in the data we presented. So I would treat those numbers as estimates. And I believe we did present them as revenue estimates. So there's likely to be some deviation from those numbers. And certainly, as I mentioned, that is full year data from 2022. So in addition, we'd expect some cost escalation over the last 3 years. No, that data does not perfectly capture what we would expect to be exempt under this. And to add on to the moderator's, I think, very apropos response, my understanding is that funding from the Affordable Housing Trust does not necessarily need to support development projects. If I'm not mistaken, I believe funding at some point was either considered and I believe appropriated for an emergency rental assistance program provided through the BCDC. So there would be flexibility in terms of how that money was used to address the plight of housing affordability. Right, thank you. Okay, thanks.
I have a motion to call the question. I see a bunch of people at the mics. Ms. Priestley, that is Ms. Priestley, right? Ms. Roberts, Ms. Frawley, Mr. McKenzie, Ms. Roseman, Mr. Bowman, Ms. Jonas, Ms. Heller, and Mr. Richmond. So I'm going to take that motion. We've been at this, I don't know, 45 minutes. And again, it's going to, if this by chance passes, it would come back to town meeting, and that's when the rubber would meet the road. So, okay. So, yes is to terminate debate, and a no is to keep going. And we have no additional speakers lined up. Oh, and we have Mr. Tuckman with his question that he put in the chat. Sorry.
Okay, 141, 75, 6.
Motion fails, 141, 75, 6. So Ms. Frawley was next.
Thank you, and thank you everyone who supported holding off. Been in this town meeting now.
And who are you, Ms. Frawley?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure. Regina Frawley, it's late, precinct 16, town meeting member. The demographics have really changed since I was first in town meeting back in the 80s. And I supported rent control back then because that was how we wanted to make sure that there was a spread of income. Now there's only 20% now of the housing in Brookline is single family. Most people sitting here are either renters or condo owners, with the exception of precincts 15 and 16. And we ask for your support because this is going to hit us more than it'll hit any other demographic in town, the single family homeowner. As the previous assessor said to me, it isn't the quality of the house, and I need all kinds of upgrades from 1965. It's the land it's sitting on. So the value is up only because of where it's sitting, and the likelihood is somebody will come in and gut the house at the very least and perhaps tear it down, as is now very visible in my precinct. I'm beginning to see it. This should be an issue of equity and compassion because we supported you during rent control days. We need you to make sure this doesn't fall unreasonably on single family people, because our homes in my condition is almost $1 million. And trust me, it needs $50,000 in just maintenance right now. So please do not support this. It's not ready, and 1 million is way too low. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question. Mr. Tuckman's question is, please have someone list. Thank you. Mr. Tuckman's question is, please have someone list all state and local fees currently and what the total percentage is. Folks should know how much we're already paying from sales. I don't know if anyone would have that handy. That's a kind of a question that I think needs a little research. Ms. Roseman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Linda Roseman, town meeting member, precinct 14. My question is, we keep hearing that this is going to come back to town meeting if it passes and be tweaked. My question is, who's tweaking it? And who's going to decide what the threshold is and what the percentage is?
Mr. Lebovitz. You're our expert on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Alec Lebovitz, Town Meeting Member Precinct 8. Thanks for that question, Linda. So should the home rule petition be approved by the legislature, which I'd note the legislature retains the right to edit a home rule petition should they wish, but while engrossing it. So the legislature would have an option to, make some amendments should they decide to. I will say once this home rule is approved, this would necessarily come back to town meeting before any enactment. So we would go through a warrant article process at town meeting. That process would determine where we would set the value exemption floor or floors. As I mentioned in my remarks, we could set variable rates at differing floors. We'd also decide what rates to set then. So those decisions would be made by town meeting.
So the ones that are in place now are just placeholders, basically.
Thank you, Dennis. Within the constraints of the warrant article. And for this reason, the petitioners of warrant article 24 were very deliberate to craft as much flexibility as we could into this home rule petition. So I would just stress, for instance, that $1 million floor is a true floor. We could set that at any amount higher than $1 million. We could set multiple floors, as I mentioned, above $1 million. That's just our jumping off point. So we may very well decide at a future town meeting process that $2 million is a more appropriate floor, or 2.5 for Brookline, which might make some sense given our aggregate property value. So those decisions would be necessarily made by town meeting.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Clint Richmond, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 6. There was a reference to similar home rule petitions in other communities. And the question I ask is, how similar is the home rule petition that's being proposed here similar to the ones that were in other communities? In other words, is there sort of a movement to have the same language as there was for the second generation anticoagulant rodenticides? Those was identical language across all communities.
Mr. Lebovitz.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Alec Lebovitz, Town Meeting Member Precinct 8, and thanks for that question. The answer is they are very similar. There have been across some of the communities some small adjustments made to right size them to various communities. We've made some small adjustments. The revenue split amendment we accepted, for instance, being a good example. But I would note that our warrant article and the majority of the home rule petitions, particularly those that have been passed in the last 2 years, very closely mirror Governor Healy's proposal that was included as part of her Affordable Homes Act. So the answer is they are very close in really core design elements and in fact in language as well.
So you're saying things like the exemptions may be harmonized, but the split between into the general fund is something that's not across the board.
That's right. But for instance, other design elements like the value floor exemptions, the varying fee rates, the exemptions, as you mentioned, those are fairly standardized across. But yes, the amendment we accepted and negotiated with the select board is fairly unique to Brookline.
Thank you, Ms. Priestley.
Hi, Vina Priestley, Precinct 4. I just had a couple of questions, just clarifying questions. Is there going to be some type of exemption versus investment property versus living in the property? Based on your percentage wise that you were saying?
Mr. Lebovitz. You're the expert.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Alec Lebovitz, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 8. So currently in warrant article 24, we have not put an explicit exemption between investment or resident owned properties. That being said, again, returning to this theme of flexibility, we did include enabling language in warrant article 24 that would give Brookline broad authority to craft new exemptions that we didn't explicitly put forward, and to amend exemptions that are put forward in the article. So that would be another decision that would be left up to town meeting in a future implementation process.
Second question. How about time frame living within the property? Let's say you're an investor, you buy it, you fix it, flip it. So versus someone that's lived in the property for 20 years and now don't need this huge property anymore and I want to sell it to a different family. Is there some type of length in ownership, or versus if someone dies, it goes in a trust, they have to sell it for probate?
So again, there's no explicit link created in the warrant article currently. That could be changed by town meeting again. And I would note that we would expect a short-term flipping of residential properties would likely end up with a higher average fee burden on those individuals than folks who had aged in their home and acquired more equity. So I think the design itself helps somewhat to mitigate that concern, but that's also something we could revisit at that future town meeting process.
Thank you.
Mr. McKenzie.
Kevin McKenzie, Town Meeting Member Precinct 13. Previously, Senator Cream has expressed her support for a local option real estate transfer fee, and the petitioners have indicated, oh, it's going down again? Okay, I'll just hold it. And the petitioners have indicated that they met with the senator who expressed her support for a home rule petition. My question is for Town Council. Can the senator take any action or submit a home rule petition without the explicit vote of town meeting tonight, authorizing the select board to do so? Thank you.
Or may,
Joe Callahan. So if we do not receive town meeting approval, then the senator or representative for Brookline wouldn't be able to file a bill that just dealt with Brookline. This is a requirement of the Home Rule Amendment. So if a piece of legislation only deals with the particular community, you need the community's consent.
okay. Mr. Bowman?
John Bowman, Precinct 10. I heard the speaker who spoke in opposition to the warrant article claim that as it was worded, it would be too easy for people who were most able to pay to game the system and not pay. I'd like to hear somebody, in addition to them, speak to the level of vulnerability of the warrant article to this claim.
Okay, Mr.
Mr. Moderator, I rise to a question of privilege with great trepidation, just like I did last week.
Please do.
We have given the petitioner 5 bites of the apple. Surely someone who's not the petitioner could answer the question, or dare I say, the person who suggested in one sentence there are vulnerabilities could expound upon it, just as we've given the petitioner 5 bites of the apple. But this is
Well, I'm
no
not
way to-
saying anyone from the table here popping up.
You're not asking them either.
Okay, Town Council, can you shed any light on this? Or Mr. Seufer, who is an esteemed counsel also. Give us a lesson on how to game this.
Ariel Seufer, Town Meeting Member Precinct 2. I am a lawyer, so I have to be careful and say here that nothing I'm saying is providing legal advice, and should we pass this, please do not rely on anything I'm saying here. You know, take this at your own risk, and it'll obviously depend on what the specifics of the law end up being. And
spoken like a true careful lawyer, thank you.
And as applied to your specific situation. So, with a couple of little minor caveats, this is not my area of law, but it's not rocket surgery to do something like this. All you do is you say, all right, we're going to take an LLC. The LLC is going to own the property, and I want to sell my property to Alec. So what I do, I just sell the LLC to Alec. There was never a real estate transfer. It's real simple. People do things like this all the time, and it's not complicated. It's not hard to execute on. You don't even have to pay your lawyer all that much money to do it, although we do like it when people pay lawyers, so please do try to find a way to do that. And we appreciate your business.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Vitello.
Can I ask it? Can I follow that up?
Ms. Roberts.
I was wanting to get a follow-up with that.
Okay.
Is there a way to modify after the home rule petition is approved in order to safeguard against that?
Sounds like you need a new warrant article. Ms. Roberts.
Susie Roberts, Precinct 17. I'm just wondering why there's such a passion for the home rule petition as opposed to the resolution, which Tommy very clearly said there really is none. And if there's support for some kind of, I guess, some kind of fundraising that is like what is being proposed in the home rule petition, does it make more sense for the entire town meeting or most of town meeting to get behind the resolution, which everybody supports, as opposed to what clearly is going to be a divided town meeting? And I'm just wondering if anybody could say which it would have more impact at the legislature, a vote by the entire town meeting in support of a resolution versus a divided vote, which may or may not work on the home rule petition. So I would love to hear from Mr. Vitolo.
Mr. Vitolo.
Tommy Vitolo, State Representative, 15th Norfolk District and Town Meeting Member at Large. It is my experience with every single home rule and every single resolution that when I schedule and have a private meeting with the chair or chair and vice chair, every single time they ask me the count of the vote. What they do with that, you're welcome to speculate, but they do ask.
Ms. Hardebeck.
Thank you, Kelly Hardebeck, town meeting member from precinct 7. This is awkward. Quick follow-up question on Linda Roseman's question, actually. So I believe her question had been, what happens after the home rule petition or resolution is granted, and this comes back to the town? The petitioner told us that town meeting would be voting on this, but I think we missed a really important step in the middle, which is who is filing that warrant article that town meeting would be evaluating and voting on once it comes back to us.
It can be the select board. It can be a citizen petition to get 10 signatures.
Thank you.
Ms. Heller.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Nancy Heller, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 8. I have a concern about seniors who live in their home. They are income challenged. They perhaps live with one of their children or is also income challenged. And what happens when they pass the property on to that child? They don't sell it. It's transferred to the child under beneficiary, survivorship, etc. So there's not a sale. And it's going to be a hardship for that child or the estate of the person who's passing it on, assuming they don't have that many assets, to pay such a transfer fee. And so I'm just concerned about that group of people. I know there are a number of them in my precinct and in neighboring precincts as well. So I'm wondering how this home rule petition deals with that problem.
Am I correct? If there's no sale, it's a passes in family, there's an exemption.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Jonas.
Elisa Jonas, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 16. As one of those people who also lives in the precinct with lots of single family houses where $1 million does not get you very much. I do know that Boston has a housing market that's not exactly the same as Brookline, but also has high housing costs. And in Boston, Mayor Wu has proposed a $2 million exemption amount. And I think that's a more reasonable amount in a town like ours. I don't feel comfortable knowing that this is going to be submitted to the legislature at 1 million and feel assured that whoever is going to file the new the bylaw is going to end up I have the same concern, I think, that other people have had, that it may be $1 million proposal. And I guess I'd like to know from Alec, since we have changed where the money is going, 50% to affordable housing, 50% to general funds. And that's certainly not something that's been in other home rule petitions, why we selected 1 million instead of 2 million. And the other concern I have is we're hearing a lot of concerns. For example, Jonathan Davis, when he discussed when the sales price is lower than the basis. It seems to me then you will be paying tax on a property where you're losing money. So that's one kind of exemption. There's those people who have huge capital gains where there's going to be a huge hit, and that's going to be seniors especially. And then people who've had the property for a long time. And I keep hearing that this can all be taken care of later, but I'm not sure whether any of all those things can be taken care of. And I guess I'd like a legal.
I'm going to take that as a comment because I don't know if I don't know if that can
we're
answer that.
voting, assuming that all these different issues that haven't been addressed can be addressed once the home rule petition has gone through.
Right.
So I'm wondering, does someone here have the answer as to what kinds of exemptions will be permitted?
Well, the exemptions are in the legislation.
Well, there's certain exemptions in legislation.
Right, and
We've been
that's
hearing a lot.
And that's what would be allowed.
Well, that's not what we've been hearing from the petitioner.
But you're voting on what is in the motion.
Well, we're voting on what is in the motion.
Is this a conversation or a question?
I'm going to take Ms. Jonas's question as a comment because I don't think we can answer the question. And I'm going to take.
But that's how do some of us make decisions about how to vote?
Then vote no. That's. Okay. I've heard a motion to call the question. I'm going to take that motion. We've had it back and forth. And okay. So yes, we'll terminate debate. And at the microphones, you can see who's at the mic. What's your name? I'm sorry. I can't read it.
David Brewster, Precinct 13.
Okay, David Bruce. I should know that by now. I'm sorry. Mr. Ananian and Mr. Seufer, who's spoken before. Yes. Well, that'll be, the question was, if we terminate debate, will we go on to other articles? And that's a decision the room would make. I would throw it to the room. I would explain what's in front of us, and then you would decide. Okay, so, and Mr. Birnbaum is also at the microphone, just came. Okay, so you see who's at the microphone. You see how long we've been at it. So drop the vote. This is the motion to call the question. Okay, the motion passes 161 to 53 to 9. Okay, so there are going to be two votes here. The first vote is on the substitute motion. The question is, do we convert this to a resolution? A yes says yes, we convert it to a resolution. No means we don't convert it to a resolution. We would then move on to the main motion, which is the petitioner's motion of a home rule petition. So yes is the resolution, and it's a majority vote. And if that passes, there would be another vote for the main motion. Either way, there's two votes. Okay, drop the vote. This is a substitute motion, Article 24.
Hold on a second. Not dropped. Not dropped.
It's not dropped. Technical difficulties. This vote is, do you want this in the form of a resolution?
Yes, if I want a resolution.
Yes, if you want a resolution.
Thanks.
Okay, the vote is dropping. Okay, ready, set, go. Majority vote.
Okay, 97, 118, 8.
Motion fails, 97, 118, 8. So now we move on to the main motion, which is the home rule petition, which starts on page 2415 to 2421. And whenever you're ready, drop the vote. Yes is to vote for the home rule legislation. No is against it.
Okay, 130, 84, 13.
Motion passes 130, 84, 13. Abstention is 13. 130, 84, 13. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a decision. It's now 10:25. We have in front of us Articles 25, 6, 7, and Article 30. Article 25, there's no opposition. Oh, and 28. 28, there's a bunch of speakers signed up. 26, there's no opposition. And then 30, I'm told, remember, I'm not moderating 30. It's going to take at least 30 minutes. So the question is, so it would be a motion to.
On your screen.
Right. Yeah, I know. So the question is, do we adjourn? Or do we come back tomorrow? So I'll accept a motion to adjourn. And do I hear a second? Okay, let's drop the motion.
All right. 160, 58, 5.
Motion passes 160, 58, 5. See you tomorrow at 7.